My boyfriend thinks hurting me is funny, but I don't know how much more I can take. I honestly never thought I'd be the kind of person to write something like this. I always thought I was good at setting boundaries, good at recognizing red flags, and good at walking away when things turn toxic. But I guess it's different when you're in it. I've been with my boyfriend, Mark, for almost 2 years now. When we met, he was charming, genuinely funny, smart, and confident in a way that drew people in. I met him at a friend's housewarming party. He was telling this story about accidentally burning a frozen pizza because he thought 350 degrees was Celsius and not Fahrenheit. And everyone was cracking up, including me. He looked over, smiled, and said, "You have a great laugh." That's how it started. The first few months were amazing. He brought me flowers randomly, left notes on my car windshield, and introduced me to his family within a month. His mom adored me. His sister and I became close. He even told me he could see a future with me. But things started changing in small, almost imperceptible ways. It began with him playfully pinching me, hard, and laughing when I yelped. He'd say, "You're so sensitive, babe. It's cute." Or he'd sneak up behind me and slap my thigh, then grin like it was the funniest thing in the world. I didn't love it, but at first, I brushed it off. I told myself it was just his weird way of being playful, but then it escalated. He'd flick my ear or smack my arm during arguments and say, "Don't be dramatic, I didn't hit you. I was just making a point." If I got upset, he'd roll his eyes and say, "Oh my God, Meg, you act like I beat you. It's a joke." Once I was cooking dinner and he snuck up behind me and squeezed my side so hard that I dropped a knife. It barely missed my foot, I screamed, and he just started laughing. "You should have seen your face," he said, wiping tears from his eyes. That night, I told him seriously, "Mark, that wasn't funny. I could have gotten hurt." He sighed and said, "Babe, calm down. It's just how I show affection. You take everything too seriously." I wish I could say I stood my ground, but instead, I just let it slide. I told myself he'd stop once he realized I didn't like it, but he didn't. The next time it happened, we were at a BBQ with friends. Someone made a joke about tough relationships, and Mark chimed in, "You think you have it bad? My girlfriend gets bruises just from cuddling me." Everyone laughed, including him. I laughed too, because I didn't want to look uptight, but inside I felt sick. After that night, I told him again that his jokes hurt me, both physically and emotionally. He looked offended and said, "Are you saying I'm abusive? Because that's a pretty big accusation, Meg." I'd never hurt you. The way he said it made me doubt myself. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe I was being too sensitive. But a few weeks later, we were watching TV on the couch, and he slapped my leg, hard. Just because I accidentally changed the channel while reaching for my drink. It left a red mark. He kissed it after and said, "See? Now it's all better." I froze. I didn't know how to respond. Part of me wanted to scream. Part of me wanted to cry, but mostly, I just wanted to disappear. The next day, I wore jeans to work even though it was 90 degrees out. My coworker Jenna noticed and asked if I was okay. I brushed it off, but she gently said, "Meg, if something's going on, you can tell me." That was the first time I even considered that maybe. This wasn't just joking around. When I brought it up again to Mark later that week, he laughed it off at first. Then he got quiet. "You really think I'd ever hurt you?" he asked. I told him that whether he meant to or not, it did hurt. He looked at me for a long time before saying, "I do that because I love you. It's like my way of being close to you." That line has haunted me ever since, because how do you respond to that? How do you explain to someone that love shouldn't leave marks on your skin? The next day, I went to my sister Rachel's place. I hadn't told her much about what was going on, just little things here and there. But when she saw a faint bruise on my arm, she froze. "Who did that?" she asked. I hesitated. "It was Mark, but it's not what you think. She interrupted me. "Meg, don't do that. Don't minimize it. We talked for hours." She told me how her ex had started with playful things too. Tickling too hard, grabbing too rough, and how it slowly turned into full-blown control. She said, "It doesn't matter what he calls it. If it hurts you, it's not love." That night, I went home and couldn't sleep. I kept replaying every time Mark had laughed while I cried or brushed off my pain like it was a punchline. I realized I hadn't felt truly safe around him in months. The next morning, I told him I needed a break. He freaked out, said I was being manipulated by my drama queen sister, and that I'd regret it. I told him I needed space. He slammed the door on his way out. For a week, I didn't hear from him. Then, he showed up at my apartment with flowers. He cried, said he didn't realize how much he'd hurt me, and promised he'd stop. I wanted to believe him. I really did. But a few days later, while we were watching a movie, he reached over and playfully flicked my cheek. "See? Just a little one," he said, smiling. I stood up, turned off the TV, and said quietly, "Get out!" He laughed, thinking I was kidding. When he realized I wasn't, his expression changed. "You're serious?" "Yes." He tried to talk me out of it. Said I was overreacting, that no one else would put up with my sensitivity, that I'd miss him once he was gone. I didn't respond. I just opened the door. When he finally left, I locked it and sat on the floor, shaking. It's been 3 weeks since then. I haven't heard from him, though I did block him everywhere. His sister texted me once saying, "He really misses you," but I didn't reply. I'm in therapy now. My therapist, Dr. Patel, said something that stuck with me. When love starts to hurt, it's not love anymore. It's control wrapped in laughter. Sometimes I still hear his voice in my head. That teasing tone, the words, "You're too sensitive." But every time I do, I remind myself that I deserve to be safe, that love shouldn't scare me. It's hard to unlearn the idea that hurting and affection can coexist. But I'm starting to realize that anyone who needs to hurt you to feel close to you doesn't actually want closeness. They want control, and I'm finally done giving that to anyone. It's been about 6 months since I last saw Mark, and I feel like I've lived a lifetime in those months. It's strange how quiet life becomes when you finally remove the chaos you thought was normal. For the first time in a long time, I can actually hear myself think after I kicked him out. I spent weeks questioning if I'd done the right thing, not because I missed him, although I did, sometimes, but because of how warped my sense of normal had become. For so long, I convinced myself that his behavior wasn't that bad, that other couples probably joked around like that too. But the silence afterward, the calm, peaceful silence, was proof that I had made the right choice. I started journaling after my therapist, Dr. Patel, suggested it. The first few pages were just me trying to process the confusion. How I could love someone who hurt me. How he could claim to love me while ignoring my pain. I wrote down every time he made me feel small. Every moment I laughed to make a bad situation less tense. Reading it back was like holding a mirror up to a version of myself I didn't want to see. The one who kept giving second chances to someone who didn't deserve them. But healing isn't linear. Around the second month I hit a low point. I was scrolling through my phone late one night and accidentally opened our old messages. The last text I'd sent him was, "Please don't come by again." He'd replied with, "You'll regret this. No one else will love you like I do." That line used to haunt me. For weeks, I'd replay it in my mind, wondering if he was right. I didn't realize how much emotional damage that one sentence caused until my therapist pointed out something simple. He's not saying no one will love you. He's saying no one will tolerate him the way you did. That changed everything for me. I began focusing on rebuilding myself. Small steps first. I started going on morning walks before work. I joined a pottery class because I wanted to make something with my hands that didn't involve holding on to pain. I even reconnected with my college friends, who I had slowly drifted from during my relationship with Mark. They never said it out loud, but I could tell they were relieved to have me back. My sister Rachel has been my anchor through all this. She checks in constantly, sometimes just showing up at my apartment with takeout and saying, "You don't have to talk. Let's just hang out." We've gotten closer than we've been in years. She told me one night, "You didn't just leave him, Meg. You broke a cycle." And she's right. But not everything has been easy. Around month 4, Mark reached out again. It started small. A random text from an unknown number that said, "Hey," I ignored it. Then a few days later, another one. "Just wanted to see how you're doing." I didn't respond. Then came the one that made my stomach drop. "I've been going to therapy too. I've changed. I finally get it." It would have been easy to believe that once, old me probably would have taken the bait. But I've learned that "I've changed" doesn't mean much if the apology is just a way to reopen the door. I blocked the number again. And this time I didn't cry afterward. I just felt relief. Still, about a week after that, I ran into him. Purely by accident. I was at the grocery store with Rachel when I heard someone say my name. I turned around, and there he was, standing by the produce section, holding a basket like it was any other day. For a split second, my body froze. It's crazy how trauma lives in your muscles like that. How even after healing, the sight of someone can send you right back to the moment they broke you. He looked different, thinner, maybe, and a little worn out. He gave a half smile and said, "You look good." I nodded but didn't say anything. Rachel stepped up beside me like a silent wall. He kept talking. I just wanted to say I'm sorry for everything. I didn't realize how much I hurt you until after you left. I swear I've been working on myself. His voice cracked a little, and for a second, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. But then I remembered all the times he made me cry. All the nights I couldn't sleep because I was afraid of the next joke, I said calmly. I hope you do work on yourself, Mark. But that doesn't involve me anymore. He opened his mouth like he wanted to argue, but Rachel gently tugged my arm and we walked away. I thought I'd feel shaken after that, but instead I felt peaceful for the first time. I didn't doubt my choice. I didn't feel guilt or nostalgia or longing. I just felt done. After that encounter, I doubled down on therapy. I told Dr. Patel that seeing him in person didn't break me like I thought it would. She smiled and said, "That's what healing feels like. Not when it stops hurting entirely, but when it stops controlling you." Last week I did something that felt huge to me. I threw away the box of things I'd kept from our relationship. The birthday cards, old photos, the hoodie I used to sleep in. I had told myself for months that keeping them was harmless, but it was like keeping a door half open, so I closed it for good. Now my apartment feels lighter, cleaner, like it belongs to me again. I've even started dating again, though I'm being cautious. There's this guy named Daniel from my pottery class. He's quiet, funny in a gentle way, and never crosses boundaries. The first time he asked if he could hold my hand, I almost cried. Not because of the gesture itself, but because he asked. I realized how low the bar had been set for me before. Every day, I'm learning that love isn't supposed to scare you, confuse you, or make you feel small. It's supposed to make you feel seen, safe and understood, sometimes late at night. I still think about the girl I was before all of this, the one who laughed off pain and called it affection. I want to hug her and tell her she didn't deserve any of that. But I also thank her, because she's the one who finally decided she'd had enough. And that decision, the one that felt impossible, turned out to be the most freeing thing I've ever done. It's been a year now, a full 12 months since I walked out of that apartment, shut the door behind me, and decided I wasn't going to be someone's emotional punching bag anymore. I didn't think I'd make it this far back then. I really didn't. But sitting here now, in a small sunlit kitchen, with my plants thriving on the windowsill and a cup of coffee in my hand, I finally feel like I'm living my own life again, not just surviving someone else's chaos. After that day in the grocery store, Mark didn't reach out again, not directly anyway. His mom sent me a Facebook message around Christmas saying, "He still talks about you. He regrets what happened." I didn't reply. I didn't even open it fully. I just deleted it. It wasn't out of anger. It was because I realized that closure doesn't always mean confrontation. Sometimes it's just walking away and never looking back. The biggest change, though, has been how I've started to trust again. Daniel and I are still together. I took things painfully slow, like months of talking before calling him my boyfriend, slow. But he never once made me feel pressured. I remember one evening early on, we were watching a movie at my place, and he reached over to brush my hair out of my face. I flinched. He froze immediately and said, "Are you okay? Did I do something wrong?" That moment broke me a little, because instead of getting defensive, he asked me if I was okay, and then he gave me space. No guilt, no attitude, no manipulation. I told him later about what I'd been through with Mark. He didn't interrupt or pity me. He just listened, and when I was done, he said, "I'll never joke about your pain." That sentence healed something deep inside me. Over time, we built something quiet but strong. He doesn't try to fix me. He just makes room for me to grow. He'll leave me little sticky notes before work. Things like, "You've got this," "Superstar," or "Remember to eat breakfast." Small things that remind me love can be kind. And my family, especially Rachel, has been nothing short of incredible. She's still my biggest cheerleader. When I told her I started dating again, she grilled Daniel like a protective big sister. But she liked him instantly, she told me later. "He looks at you like he's in awe, not like he owns you." That stuck with me. Therapy helped me unpack more than I expected, Dr. Patel told me something in one of our last sessions that really hit home. She said, "When you've lived in survival mode for so long, peace feels boring at first, but boring is safe. And safe is beautiful," and she's right. I used to mistake intensity for passion, the constant highs and lows, the emotional whiplash. I thought that was what love felt like, but now, I crave the steady kind, the quiet dinners, the shared laughter, the trust that no one's going to turn cruel when you're vulnerable. A few months ago, I went back to visit my mom in our hometown. While I was there, I ran into one of Mark's old friends, Evan, at a coffee shop. He told me Mark had moved out of state and was supposedly turning his life around. I didn't feel much. Not anger, not sadness, not even curiosity, just peace. I think that's how you know you've healed. When their name doesn't cause a reaction anymore. Before I left that day, Evan said something that stuck with me. You really dodged a bullet, Meg. I don't think he ever deserved you. And for the first time, I believed that these days, I work part-time at a nonprofit that helps women leaving abusive relationships. It's something I never imagined doing, but it feels right. Like I'm giving purpose to all the pain I went through. Sometimes I'll sit across from a woman who's still making excuses for the man who's hurting her, and I see my old self in her eyes. I tell her what I wish someone had told me. You're not crazy. You're not overreacting. You don't owe him another chance just because he says sorry. Last week, Daniel and I went to a small cabin near Lake Tahoe. We sat by the fire, wrapped in blankets, and talked about everything and nothing. At one point, he looked at me and said, I know you've been through hell, but I want you to know you're safe now. I didn't cry. I just nodded and leaned into him, because for once, I actually believed it. It's funny. I used to think healing meant forgetting, but it's not that. It's remembering without reliving. It's understanding that what happened doesn't define me, but it shaped me into someone stronger, someone softer, someone who finally knows her worth. I used to be the girl who laughed off bruises, emotional and physical, pretending it was love. Now, I'm the woman who knows that love doesn't hurt like that. And maybe that's the biggest victory of all. For the first time in my adult life, I don't wake up anxious. I don't check my phone in fear of what message might be waiting. I don't wonder if I'm enough. I just wake up, free, at peace, and finally proud of the woman I've become. Stories number 2. He won't stop refilling his antibiotics, and I don't know how to make him see what he's doing to himself. I don't even know how to start this, but I feel like I've been living in a slow-motion nightmare for the past year. I've been married to my husband, Evan, for 5 years now. We met in college. He was the funny guy who always had some sarcastic comment but also knew how to fix literally anything. He was the type of person everyone wanted in their corner. When he got sick, he always brushed it off. I don't get sick, he'd say. And for years, that was true. But about 18 months ago, he got hit with a bad sinus infection. I remember it because it was the first time in years that he had to go to urgent care. The doctor prescribed him a round of antibiotics, amoxicillin, I think, and he got better in about a week. But then, a month later, he said he felt the same pressure behind his eyes, that his sinuses never fully cleared. He called the pharmacy and somehow convinced them to refill it. I thought it was weird but didn't push it. That was the start. Since then, he's had at least a dozen antibiotic prescriptions. He hops between urgent care clinics, uses telehealth apps, even drives to different towns sometimes so he doesn't get flagged. When I ask him why, he always says the same thing. I can feel it coming back. I know my body. Except his sinus infections never seem to line up with anything. No fever, no congestion, sometimes not even a runny nose. He just insists there's pressure, or a weird taste, or that he's on the verge of getting sick. At first, I thought it was just mild anxiety, but now it's become something darker. He has an entire section of our bathroom cabinet filled with half-used pill bottles. Sometimes, he even cuts the pills in half to make them last. When I pointed out that it's dangerous, that it could actually make bacteria resistant, he rolled his eyes. That's internet fear-mongering, he said. I've tried everything. Reasoning, begging, even threatening to call his doctor. But every time I bring it up, he gets defensive, angry, like I'm accusing him of being crazy. A few weeks ago, I caught him ordering antibiotics online from some sketchy overseas pharmacy. He said it was just in case, because he didn't want to bother the doctor again. I confronted him, and he blew up, said I was trying to control him, and that maybe if I cared about his health as much as I care about being right, I'd understand why he does it. That one hurt because I do care more than anything. I'm terrified he's going to destroy his gut health or make himself resistant to medication he might actually need someday. It's not just about the antibiotics anymore. It's about watching the person you love slowly lose trust. In doctors, in logic, in you. Last month, his mom, Diane, came to visit. She's a retired nurse. And I finally told her what's been going on. I didn't mean to throw him under the bus, but I was desperate. She confronted him gently. Said she'd seen it happen before. How people can get hooked on the safety antibiotics give them. He stormed out of the house, didn't come back until the next morning. When he did, he wouldn't talk to me. For 2 days, we barely spoke. Then last week, he got sick for real. Fever, chills, body aches. It looked like the flu. I begged him to rest, to drink fluids, to wait before taking anything. But he went straight to his stash and popped a few pills. He's been taking them every day since. The fever's gone, but now he's complaining of stomach pain. I asked if it might be from all the antibiotics, and he said, it's probably another infection starting. I don't even know what to do anymore. I feel like I'm living with a ghost version of my husband. Someone paranoid, brittle, and distant. I can't remember the last time we had a normal conversation that didn't somehow come back to his symptoms. We used to laugh all the time. He used to pull me in and say, you and me against the world. Now, I feel like the world is winning. His best friend Mark tried talking to him too. They've known each other since middle school. But even he couldn't get through. Evan accused him of taking sides and told him to mind his own business. I feel like I'm losing him piece by piece. The other day, I found another prescription bag in his car. New antibiotics. I didn't say anything this time. I just sat there holding it. Feeling this wave of helplessness, I don't want to nag him anymore. But I also can't stand by and watch him do this. It's like watching someone walk toward a cliff while insisting they know where they're going. Last night, I asked him, quietly, not accusingly, do you even trust me anymore? He didn't answer. He just sighed and said, you wouldn't understand. You never get sick. And maybe that's true. Maybe I'll never understand what it feels like to live in constant fear of your own body betraying you. But I do know what it feels like to lose trust in the person you love. And it's the loneliest thing in the world. I don't even know what I'm asking here. Maybe just, has anyone else dealt with something like this? Is there any way to make someone see reason without making them feel attacked? I love him. I really do. But it's getting harder to love the version of him that's drowning in fear and antibiotics. I just want my husband back. Update. It's been almost 4 months since I wrote that first post, and I've read it back a few times since. Each time, it hits me harder how far things have gone and how quickly they got there. I never thought I'd be the kind of person to post something so personal online. But honestly, the comments and messages I got made me feel less crazy. Like I wasn't just yelling into the void while watching someone I love destroy himself from the inside out. Things got worse before they got even remotely better. About 2 weeks after my original post, Evan's stomach pain turned into something more serious. He couldn't keep food down, was constantly nauseous, and looked gray. Like, literally gray. He finally agreed to go to the ER after he fainted in the bathroom. I think that was the first time I'd seen real fear in his eyes in months. At the hospital, they ran blood work and did some scans. The doctor, Dr. Patel, I'll never forget her, came in looking concerned but calm. She said his liver enzymes were elevated and his gut flora was significantly disrupted, which she explained in simple terms as, your body's good bacteria have been wiped out by too much antibiotic use. She asked him how long he'd been taking them. He looked at me, then back at her and said, just a couple weeks here and there. I didn't say anything, but she gave me this look like she knew there was more to it. They kept him overnight for observation and hydration. The next morning, Dr. Patel came in again, this time with a printout. It listed all the prescriptions he'd filled in the last 12 months. 11 different prescriptions, from 4 different providers. I guess she'd checked the state pharmacy database. She slid it across the table and said softly, Evan, this isn't sustainable. He went pale. He didn't speak for a full minute. Then he just said, I didn't think it was that many. That night he cried, not a quiet, stoic cry. The kind of crying that comes from deep exhaustion and guilt. He said he didn't even know why he couldn't stop. That it started because he hated feeling sick. And somewhere along the way, he started associating antibiotics with safety. Like as long as he had them, he couldn't get really sick again. Hearing him admit that broke me a little, because I finally saw the scared, anxious man underneath the defensiveness and anger. He was discharged after 2 nights, with orders to stop all antibiotics immediately and take probiotics under supervision. They referred him to a therapist who specializes in health anxiety and compulsive medical behaviors. The first few weeks were rough. He had stomach issues constantly, withdrawal-like symptoms, headaches, fatigue. Apparently your gut really does freak out when you mess with it for that long. He was irritable and restless. Sometimes he'd say, I feel like I'm crawling out of my skin. I had to hide the remaining pills, he knew. but he didn't fight me on it. Therapy started about a month later with a psychologist named Dr. Meredith Green. I sat in for the first few sessions because Evan didn't want to go alone. She's patient but firm. Asked him about control, about fear, about where this belief came from that sickness equals weakness. He talked about how his dad, Frank, used to mock him for getting colds as a kid. How when he got sick, his dad would say things like, "You can't handle a little fever? Toughen up." It was the first time I'd ever heard that story. It explained so much. Why he couldn't stand feeling vulnerable. Why he associated taking antibiotics with being proactive instead of weak. He's still in therapy now. Going once a week, I think it's helping. He doesn't like to admit it, but I can see it. He's calmer. He started to check in with me before making any medical decisions. Last month, he got a sinus infection for real this time. Fever, congestion, the works. He saw his doctor. Got antibiotics, and you know what? He finished the full prescribed course. Didn't double up, didn't refill. It sounds small, but it was huge, he told me later. I was scared the whole time that if I didn't take more, it wouldn't go away, but I trusted the doctor, and I trusted you. That made me cry. Our marriage feels different now. He still has moments. Days where he Googles symptoms for too long or second guesses what a doctor says. But it's not constant. We can have dinner without talking about medicine. We can laugh again. His mom, Diane, visits often and cooks him soups with probiotics and veggies. His best friend Mark came by last week, and for the first time in almost a year, they sat on the porch drinking beer and talking about sports instead of bacteria. It's not perfect. There's still tension sometimes. A few nights ago, he said, "I feel like I wasted so much of our time being scared." I told him that fear doesn't make someone weak. Refusing to face it does. And he smiled and said, "Then I guess I'm finally trying to be strong for real." He still has a long road ahead, but I finally feel like I have my husband back. If anyone reading this is in a similar situation, watching someone you love spiral, please know that you can't force them to see it, but you can stay steady enough for them to grab onto when they're ready. Sometimes love isn't about saving someone. It's about holding the light steady until they decide to walk toward it. Final update. It's been a little over a year since I made that first post, and I've read every word of it again before writing this. It feels like reading a letter from another life, one where I was constantly walking on eggshells, scared to say the wrong thing, scared to watch the man I loved spiral any deeper. But I promised myself if we ever made it to the other side, I'd write this final update, and somehow we did. Evan is different now. Not fixed, because I don't think you can fix anxiety like his, but grounded in a way I didn't think I'd ever see again. A few months after my last update, his therapist, Dr. Green, suggested a program for obsessive health behaviors. It wasn't inpatient, but it was intensive. 3 days a week for 8 weeks. It focused on something called exposure and response prevention, basically helping him sit with discomfort instead of immediately reaching for control. He resisted at first, said it sounded like brainwashing, but after another minor health scare, just a stomach bug, he finally agreed. Those 8 weeks changed everything. The first time he came home from therapy and said, "I had a headache today and didn't Google it," I nearly cried. That probably sounds ridiculous, but anyone who's lived with someone trapped in that loop knows how big that is. Around that time, we also started couples counseling with a woman named Dr. Lena Thomas. She helped us rebuild communication that had completely broken down. We didn't even realize how many tiny resentments we'd been carrying. Him feeling like I didn't believe his symptoms. Me feeling like I was constantly mothering a grown man instead of being his partner. There were sessions that ended with both of us crying. But for the first time in forever, we were crying together instead of against each other. Evan also got serious about his physical health, but in a good way. Instead of popping antibiotics, he started running. It began with short jogs, mostly to tire himself out, his words. Then it turned into a full routine. Now, he runs every morning before work. He lost weight, his color came back, and he says the endorphins help calm the anxiety better than anything. The funny thing is, he still gets sinus pressure sometimes, maybe even as often as before. But now he laughs about it, says, "Guess I should drink some water and not ruin my microbiome." He's learned enough about gut health that he could practically give a TED Talk. But at least now it's coming from a place of curiosity, not obsession. About 6 months ago, something happened that showed me just how far he'd come. We were at his mom's house for dinner. Diane had made her famous chicken and rice, and partway through the meal, Evan winced and pressed his stomach. She looked worried and said, "Oh no, are you okay? Should we grab something from the pharmacy?" He smiled and said, "Nah, I'm good. I probably just ate too fast." Diane froze. I froze. Because a year ago, that same scenario would have ended with him raiding the medicine cabinet or making a telehealth appointment mid-dinner. But this time, he just shrugged it off and went back to eating. Later that night, in the car, I told him how proud I was of him. He didn't say anything for a while, just kept his eyes on the road. Then he said, "You know, I used to think you were nagging me. Now I realize you were just scared. You loved me enough to be the bad guy. That broke me in the best way." We still have little reminders of the past, like the old medicine drawer that's now filled with vitamins and Band-Aids instead of bottles of antibiotics. Every time I open it, I get a weird pang of nostalgia and relief. It's a symbol of how far we've come. A few weeks ago, we took a trip to Oregon, just the two of us. It was the first real vacation we've had in years. We hiked, ate seafood by the coast, and for once, we didn't pack a single just-in-case pill bottle. Not one night we were watching the sunset, and I told him I still get scared sometimes. That one day the anxiety might come back full force. He nodded and said, "Yeah, me too, but this time, I know I can handle it without destroying myself in the process." He said it so calmly, like someone who had finally stopped fighting the current and learned how to swim. That's when I realized, I'm not scared anymore either. He's not perfect. Neither am I. But our marriage feels like it's finally built on something solid again. Trust, communication, and the kind of understanding that only comes from surviving something together. If anyone out there is where I was a year ago, begging someone to stop hurting themselves while they insist they're fine, I want you to know it's okay to be tired. It's okay to set boundaries. And it's okay to admit you can't fix them by yourself. Sometimes love looks like patience. Sometimes it looks like stepping back, and sometimes it looks like driving them to therapy even when they hate you for it. Because one day, they'll thank you for saving them from the version of themselves that couldn't stop spiraling. Evan and I aren't the same people who started this story. But maybe that's a good thing. We learned that love isn't about keeping someone from falling. It's about helping them stand back up when they do. And he's standing tall now. Stories number 3. My family planned a vacation for 8 adults with 1 shower. I said it was a bad idea, and now I'm the difficult one, so my family has this tradition of doing a big summer trip every year. Usually it's pretty laid back. Someone finds a big rental house. We split the cost, and everyone kind of does their own thing. It's mostly about spending time together, cooking meals, going out for walks, or hanging by the lake, but this year, things have gone sideways before we've even packed a bag. It started with my sister, Claire, finding what she called a perfect rustic cabin up north. She sent the link to our family group chat and was so proud of how affordable it was. The photos looked great at first glance. Wood beams, cozy fire pit, close to hiking trails, lake views, all that. But then I noticed the fine print. 1 shower, 2 toilets, 8 adults. I immediately said, "Wait, 1 shower for 8 adults for a whole week?" She brushed it off right away. "Yeah, it'll be fine. We'll make a schedule or something. It's just a shower." But it's not just a shower. We're talking about 8 grown people. Me, my boyfriend Mark, my sister Claire and her husband Nate, my brother Ben and his wife Sarah, and our parents Jim and Linda. This isn't a group of easygoing 20-year-olds crashing for the weekend. We've got 2 people who need hot water for their morning joint pain, a couple who showers after every hike, and a mom who takes her time blow-drying her hair like she's getting ready for a photo shoot. I pointed all that out, thinking everyone would see how impractical it was. Instead, I got a mix of eye rolls and "you're overreacting" comments. Ben even joked, "Oh, come on. You act like you're going to die if you can't shower for 12 minutes, I said. It's not about that, it's about time. 1 shower means we'll constantly be waiting, or worse, fighting about it." Mom chimed in with her classic peacekeeping tone. "Honey, we've shared bathrooms before. It's not the end of the world. And sure, we have. But that was when we were kids. This is different. We're adults now, with spouses, routines, and personal space. I don't want to feel like I'm back in a dorm line waiting to use the bathroom." I tried to be reasonable. I said if we could find a place with at least 2 showers, I'd happily split the cost. But Claire got defensive right away. "Not everyone can afford a luxury cabin," she snapped. I already paid the deposit. That made me pause. I didn't even know she'd booked it without confirming with the rest of us. She'd just assumed everyone would agree. When I brought that up, she said, I had to act fast. Places were getting booked up. Dad, trying to smooth things over, said, Let's just make it work this one time. We're there to be together. Not to worry about plumbing. That was the point where I realized I was alone in this. Everyone was nodding, acting like I was being high maintenance for even bringing it up. I dropped it at the time, but the whole situation rubbed me the wrong way. I wasn't trying to ruin the trip. I just wanted it to be realistic. But apparently, common sense makes you negative in my family. Fast forward to a few weeks later. When we actually got there, the cabin was cute, sure. It had a beautiful view of the lake and a big porch where we had coffee every morning. But the bathroom situation was exactly what I expected. A disaster. The shower was tiny, the water pressure was weak, and somehow it took forever for the hot water to reach the pipes. The first morning, Dad went first because of his arthritis. Then Mom, then Nate. By the time it was my turn, the water was lukewarm, and the floor was flooded. Everyone kept saying, "Just give it a minute," like I was being dramatic. But that minute turned into hours of rotating people trying to get ready, brushing teeth over each other's shoulders, and yelling through the door. By day 3, even Claire had to admit it was bad. She was frustrated because her husband couldn't shower before heading out to hike, and Sarah was irritated because she couldn't do her morning skincare routine. We ended up with a sort of shower roster taped to the fridge. Dad at 6:30, Mom at 7, Claire at 7:30, and so on. It was ridiculous. If someone missed their slot, everyone else got thrown off. The tension started to build quietly at first, then turned into snippy comments. "Ben, can you not take 20 minutes in there?" Sarah. "Well, I have conditioner in my hair." Mark. "I might as well jump in the lake." By midweek, people were jumping in the lake just to rinse off, which would have been fine if the water wasn't freezing. The bathroom situation started affecting everything else. Breakfasts were delayed, hikes were pushed back, and by the end of the trip, half the group was showering at night just to avoid the morning chaos. The kicker came when Mom clogged the shower drain with her hair, and the water started pooling around our feet. The landlord had to send someone out to fix it, which cost extra. That's when I looked at Claire and said quietly, "Still think it's fine?" She just glared at me. When we got home, I figured we'd all laugh about it and agree to plan better next time. Instead, the family chat turned into another argument. Ben said, "We all survived, didn't we?" Claire said, "You made the whole trip sound like a chore before we even left." And Mom said, "It wasn't ideal, but it was still family time." I finally told them, "I'm not doing another trip like that again. One shower for 8 adults isn't reasonable, and pretending it's fine doesn't make it fine." Now they're calling me the uptight one, who can't go with the flow. But honestly, I just don't think expecting a second shower is unreasonable. I'm all for family bonding, but I'd rather bond over coffee than stand in line outside a bathroom holding my towel like I'm at summer camp. About 2 weeks after we got back from the cabin, the family group chat was still oddly quiet. Usually after a trip we'd share pictures, talk about the funny moments, maybe start planning the next one. But this time, nothing. Just silence, except for one text from my mom saying she had a lovely time despite the bumps. Then one afternoon, I got a message from Claire asking if we could talk. I assumed it was about the trip and braced myself for round 2 of, "You're too negative." We met at a cafe near her place. She looked tired, but she was trying to keep it light. She started off with small talk, but eventually said, "So, I just wanted to say, I didn't mean to make you feel like your opinion didn't matter. I was just stressed trying to book something everyone could afford." It caught me off guard. I wasn't expecting her to apologize. I told her I appreciated her trying to organize the trip, but that she kind of railroaded everyone into it by booking without asking. She sighed and said, "Yeah, I know. I thought if I didn't do it fast, we wouldn't go at all." That part I actually understood. Our family can take forever to agree on anything. But I told her that even if it meant skipping this year, that would have been better than pretending 8 adults could comfortably share one shower. She laughed and admitted she hadn't even noticed the one shower part until I pointed it out. "I thought it just meant one full bathroom," she said. "I didn't think about it being the only place to shower." We talked for a while, and by the end of it, things between us felt better. I could tell she still thought I was a bit dramatic, but at least she wasn't holding a grudge. Later that night, my mom called me. She said she'd heard I'd talked to Claire and wanted to clear the air. I love my mom, but she has this thing where she wants everyone to just smile through conflict. She said, "I think everyone was just tense. Maybe next year we'll pick somewhere with a bit more space, but I don't want this to ruin how close we all are." I told her I wasn't mad anymore, But I wasn't going to pretend like it hadn't been miserable at times. I also told her I wasn't trying to start fights. I just didn't want to feel unheard. She said, fair enough, but then immediately followed it with, still, I think you should have gone easier on your sister, so I guess progress is slow. The funny part is, the people who were most vocal about me being high maintenance started admitting things over time. About a week after that call, my brother Ben texted in the group chat, FYI, I just took a 10-minute shower in peace and almost cried with joy. Sarah chimed in, same, I love you guys, but next time I'm only going somewhere with 2 showers minimum. Even Claire reacted with a laughing emoji. Then Nate, her husband, dropped a comment that kind of changed the tone. Let's be real. Next year, we should all just get our own Airbnb cabins near each other. Everyone jumped on board instantly. My mom resisted a little. That defeats the purpose of being together. But once someone suggested we could just gather at one cabin for meals, she softened. So yeah, I think the 1-shower fiasco actually made everyone realize we've outgrown the squeeze into one house trips. It's not about not loving each other, it's just about respecting that we're all adults now. The best part? A few days ago, Claire sent another link in the chat. This time she said, okay, I've learned my lesson. This one has 3 showers. The whole group exploded with laughing emojis and gifs of people cheering. We haven't booked it yet, but I'm cautiously optimistic. It feels like we might finally be able to do one of these trips without someone storming off, passive-aggressively drying their hair in the kitchen, or scheduling shower time like it's a work meeting. Mark, my boyfriend, joked that I should print a t-shirt that says, I told you so, but nicely, and wear it on the next trip. Honestly, I might. It's kind of funny how something as small as a shower turned into this much drama, but I think it highlighted what's been going on in our family for a while. Everyone trying so hard to keep the peace that we don't actually talk about what makes us uncomfortable. This time, we did, and maybe next time, we'll get the balance right. About 6 months after the 1-shower disaster, our family dynamics finally started to feel normal again. Or maybe different in a better way. We weren't pretending everything was fine anymore, but we were actually learning to communicate like adults. Around springtime, Claire started floating the idea of another trip, but she was cautious this time. Instead of booking something impulsively, she made a shared Google Doc with potential cabins and a spreadsheet for everyone's preferences. I had to laugh when I opened it. The first column said, number of showers, bolded and highlighted in yellow. I joked in the family group chat, you've grown, Claire, and she replied, never again, Emily, never again. This time, everyone participated. Ben suggested a cabin near Lake Tahoe that had 4 bathrooms and a private deck. Sarah offered to handle the grocery list. Even my mom, who normally steamrolls plans, said she'd let us vote on the final place. It was such a change from last time that Mark leaned over one evening and said, I think they're scared of you now, I told him. Good. Fear is the foundation of family harmony, but in all seriousness, it felt good to see that we'd learned from it. The best part? When we finally went, it was amazing. The place was spacious, cozy, and actually clean. No one had to time their showers. The kitchen didn't look like a battlefield. We had space to breathe, and for the first time in forever, I wasn't counting the days until I could sleep in my own bed again. Even my mom, who'd initially rolled her eyes at the luxury of multiple bathrooms, admitted that it made everything smoother. On the second day, while we were all eating breakfast, she said, okay, fine, I get it. You can't squeeze 8 adults into one bathroom. It's just not realistic. Claire threw a piece of toast at her playfully and said, we're all growing here. That night, sitting around the fire pit, we actually laughed about the chaos of the old cabin. Ben reenacted trying to shave while someone brushed their teeth behind him, and Mark did an overdramatic imitation of me announcing shower sign-up sheets. By the end of it, everyone was crying with laughter. It felt like something that used to be a point of tension had turned into a family story. One of those, can you believe we did that? Moments that you retell for years. But I think what really stuck with me was what my mom said before we left. She pulled me aside as we were packing the car and said, you were right, you know? We try so hard to make everything perfect that we stop listening to each other. I didn't realize how much pressure I put on everyone to just get along, instead of actually making it work for everyone. I hugged her, because that's not something she says often. She's the peacekeeper of the family, but that peace used to come at the cost of honesty. The drive home felt lighter. Nobody was snapping or passive-aggressively sighing. Even when traffic got bad, no one complained. It was almost eerie how calm it was. Later that night, Mark and I got back to our apartment, dropped our bags by the door, and just sat on the couch in silence for a minute. Then he said, "You realize your family just had a functional trip?" I laughed. I know, miracles do happen. Since then, things have genuinely been better. Family dinners are easier. Decisions aren't made behind people's backs. And everyone's kind of learned to read the room. Claire and I even started hanging out again one-on-one. Something we hadn't done much since we were kids. We'll grab coffee and joke about who's going to have the first baby just to make Mom panic. Looking back, that whole one-shower debacle feels like the turning point we didn't know we needed. It was miserable in the moment, but it forced everyone to face how bad we were at compromise. It made us realize that family bonding doesn't mean sacrificing basic comfort or pretending everything's fine. Now, when someone brings up next year's trip, the first thing Ben says is, "How many bathrooms?" And everyone laughs. So yeah, it was ridiculous. It was crowded, frustrating, and one of the most uncomfortable weeks of my life. But if that's what it took for my family to start being honest and actually listen to each other, I guess it was worth it. And every time I step into my own shower now, with the door locked and no one knocking, I swear I appreciate it more than ever. Stories number 4. She wants my son to call her mama, and I can't take it anymore. When I first married my husband Adam, I thought his mom, Linda, was one of those slightly overbearing but ultimately harmless mother-in-law types. She'd bake me casseroles, send me random family recipe texts, and comment on every Facebook post like it was her personal diary. It was intense, sure, but manageable, I just told myself. She means well and tried to keep the peace. That peace didn't last long after I gave birth to our son, Noah. From the moment I was pregnant, Linda started acting like it was her baby. I'm not even exaggerating. She'd talk about our baby. She'd pat my belly and say things like, "Grandma can't wait to meet her little boy." But sometimes she wouldn't even say grandma. Sometimes she'd say, "Mama can't wait to meet you," and laugh like it was a cute joke. At first, I brushed it off. I thought it was just a weird slip. Maybe a grandmotherly nickname she was testing out. But once Noah was born, it started getting uncomfortable really fast. When we brought him home from the hospital, Linda came over with an entire suitcase, not a diaper bag. A suitcase. She unpacked it like she was moving in. She had pajamas, slippers, a whole toiletry kit, and even a framed photo of her and Adam to put in the baby's nursery so he knows where he comes from. She called it helping. I called it hovering. The first night home, I was exhausted beyond words. I'd had an emergency C-section, I was on pain meds, and Noah wouldn't latch properly. Adam tried to soothe him, but Linda swooped in like some sort of self-appointed savior. "He just needs mama," she said. And I thought she meant me. But then she took him right out of my arms. She rocked him and whispered, "It's okay. Mama's here," in that sing-songy baby voice. I was so stunned I just sat there, frozen, when I finally found the words. I said, Linda, I'm Mama." She laughed and said, "Oh, honey, it's just a habit, don't worry. He knows who his real mother is, except..." She didn't stop. It became this thing she did every time she saw him. "Come to Mama. Mama loves you. Give Mama kisses." I tried to correct her gently at first, but she'd wave me off or make excuses. Adam thought I was being overly sensitive. "She's just excited," he'd say. "You know she doesn't mean anything by it." But it started to get under my skin. It felt like she was trying to rewrite her role in his life. She even started telling her friends that Noah was just like my baby all over again. And once, I overheard her say to someone at church, "I get to be Mama again without all the sleepless nights." That one made me see red. The breaking point came at Noah's first birthday party. We'd invited family and a few close friends over for a small backyard thing. Cake, balloons, the usual. Linda, of course, arrived 2 hours early to help decorate. She brought a banner that said, "Mama's boy turns 1." I stared at it and said, "You mean Grandma's boy, right?" She blinked at me, smiled that tight smile she always wears when she's trying to stay in control, and said, "Oh, it's just a cute saying. It doesn't have to mean anything specific." But it did mean something specific, and everyone knew it. I let it go in the moment because I didn't want to make a scene at Noah's party. But later, when we were all gathered around singing Happy Birthday, she leaned over and whispered loudly enough for everyone to hear, "Say thank you to Mama for the balloons." Noah, that was it. I took a deep breath and said, "Linda, I really need you to stop calling yourself Mama. It's confusing for Noah, and it makes me uncomfortable." Her smile dropped. The entire party went silent. She looked at me like I'd just kicked her puppy. "Well," she said in this icy voice, "I didn't realize you were the only one allowed to love him like a mother." Before I could even respond, she turned to Adam and said, "Are you really going to let her talk to me that way?" Adam froze. He just stood there, holding the cake knife, looking like a deer in headlights. I could tell he wanted to stay neutral. But his silence made everything worse. Linda grabbed her purse, muttered something about ungrateful children, and left. Half the guests made awkward excuses to leave soon after. That night, Adam and I had one of the worst fights we've ever had. He said I embarrassed his mother and made a scene at our son's birthday. I told him I was sick of feeling like a guest in my own child's life. He insisted it was just a nickname. But I told him it wasn't about a nickname. It was about boundaries. He eventually said, "Fine, I'll talk to her." But the conversation must have gone poorly because Linda hasn't spoken to me since. She'll call Adam and FaceTime with Noah, but every time I walk into the room, she'll say, "Oh, there's her," like I'm some outsider. The last time she visited, she refused to even look me in the eye. When Noah ran to her yelling, "Grandma," because yes, I taught him that word. She ignored him until he said, "Mama." Then she lit up like it was Christmas morning. I snapped. I told her that if she couldn't respect being his grandmother, she wouldn't see him at all. She started crying, calling me cruel, saying I was cutting her out of his life. Adam tried to calm things down, but I told him, I'm done being the bad guy for protecting my own son's sense of family. He slept on the couch that night. Since then, things have been tense. Linda's side of the family thinks I'm overreacting. My family thinks she's creepy and manipulative, and Adam, well, he's caught in the middle, which is exactly where she wants him. I love him. But I'm tired of being treated like I'm unreasonable for having boundaries. Noah is almost 2 now, and he's starting to talk more. I want him to know who his real mother is. Not grow up confused because someone else decided to play the part. The sad part? I think Linda genuinely believes she's doing nothing wrong. In her mind, this is just love. But love doesn't mean erasing someone else's role. I've started wondering if this is going to be one of those lifelong power struggles. Me versus his mother. Where I'm always fighting to remind people that I'm mom. And honestly, I'm exhausted. It's been about 8 months since I posted about the whole mama situation. And honestly, I wish I could say things got better. They didn't. If anything, they got messier in a way that made me question not just my mother-in-law, but my marriage too. After that birthday fiasco, Linda went low contact with me. She refused to come over if I was home. And she'd only talk to Adam. That might sound like peace, but it wasn't. She still managed to inject herself into our lives through Adam, constantly calling, texting, and guilt-tripping him. She'd say things like, I just don't feel welcome in my grandson's life anymore. Or, I don't want to upset her. Like I didn't even deserve a name. And Adam, he didn't handle it the way I hoped he would. Instead of setting boundaries, he tried to keep the peace by appeasing her, which meant sneaking in phone calls with her, bringing Noah to see her without telling me, and basically gaslighting me when I found out. The first time I caught him doing that, it was a Sunday afternoon. I noticed Noah's car seat wasn't in the living room like usual. When I asked where he'd gone, Adam froze for a second before admitting, I took him to see Mom, I swear. I felt my blood pressure spike instantly. You did what? I asked. She missed him, he said. Like that made it okay. I didn't want to make it a big deal. I just thought, if you weren't there, it'd be easier for everyone. Easier for her, you mean? I shot back. You're teaching our son that it's okay to ignore boundaries. Adam, he sighed like I was the one being unreasonable and said, Can't you just let her have this? She's old, she's lonely, and she loves him. I told him that loving someone doesn't mean you get to pretend to be their mother. That this wasn't about kindness. It was about control. He didn't have much to say after that. Mostly just rubbed his temples and muttered, I can't deal with this right now. I told him that if he couldn't deal with it, I would. That night I texted Linda directly. I told her I knew Adam had taken Noah over, and that I wanted her to stop referring to herself as Mama. I told her I wanted her in Noah's life, but only as Grandma. She didn't reply right away. But the next morning, I woke up to a novel-length text from her that basically said I was emotionally abusive, that I was keeping a child from love, and that I needed help. She even said, You're jealous of the bond I have with Noah because you don't know how to be a mother. That one hit me like a slap. I showed Adam the messages, thinking maybe now he'd finally get it. But he just sighed and said, You both need to chill out. I was livid. I told him that his refusal to take a side was taking a side. We barely spoke for a week after that. Then one night, I went to pick up Noah from daycare, and one of the teachers said, "Your husband's mom is so sweet. She picked him up early today." My stomach dropped. Linda wasn't on the approved pickup list. Adam was the only other authorized adult. I called him immediately, and he said, "Yeah." Mom offered to grab him since I was running late from work. I pulled into her driveway so fast I nearly broke my brakes. When I got inside, Noah was sitting on her lap, and she was reading him a book, whispering, "Mama loves you." I saw red. I told her she had no right to pick up my child without my permission. She acted calm at first, saying, "Oh, it's no big deal. I was just helping." But when I demanded she hand Noah over, she clutched him tighter and said, "Maybe you shouldn't be around him if you're going to act like this." I grabbed my phone and said, "If you don't hand him to me right now, I'm calling the police." That's when she finally let go. But she looked at me with this smug, wounded expression that made my skin crawl. "You're sick, you know that?" she hissed. "You're trying to erase me from his life." I told her that if she ever crossed that line again, she would be erased. Legally. When I told Adam what happened, he was furious, but not at her. He said, "You shouldn't have gone off like that. She's just trying to help." That was the night I packed a bag for Noah and stayed with my sister. Emily was livid when I told her everything. She said, "That's not just boundary stomping. That's abduction." She made me call a family lawyer the next day. The lawyer said that since Linda wasn't on the authorized pickup list and had no custody rights, what she did could technically be considered unlawful, especially if she did it again. He recommended we formalize custody and guardianship documents. And to keep a written record of everything, I started documenting every message, every call, every time she tried to undermine me. Adam accused me of taking things too far. But I told him that if he wouldn't protect his family, I would. A few weeks later, Linda called crying, saying she wanted to apologize. I didn't trust it. But Adam begged me to give her one last chance. So we invited her over for dinner. She brought Noah a big stuffed animal and brought me a gift too. A framed photo of her holding him as a newborn. Across the bottom, in cursive, it said, "Mama's boy." I thought I was going to scream. Adam saw my face and immediately said, "Mom, what were you thinking?" Linda just smiled and said, "It's just a little joke. Don't be so dramatic." That was the moment Adam finally snapped. He told her that she'd crossed every possible line, that she was never to call herself Mama again, and that if she didn't start respecting me, she'd lose her relationship with Noah entirely. Linda cried and stormed out, of course. But this time Adam didn't chase after her. It's been 2 months since then. She still hasn't reached out to me, and her contact with Noah is limited to supervised visits that we schedule together. Adam finally admitted that he'd been in denial about how toxic things had gotten, and he started therapy to work on setting boundaries. We're not perfect. The damage this caused to our marriage is still healing. But for the first time, I actually feel like he's on my side, and Noah, he's thriving. He calls me Mommy, and when he sees his grandma now, he knows exactly who she is. It took nearly 2 years of hell to get here, but I finally feel like I got my family back. It's been just over a year since everything blew up with Linda, and honestly, this past year has felt like a lifetime. I never imagined my marriage, my motherhood, and my sanity would all be tested over something that seemed so simple on the surface. Just a name. But Mama wasn't just a name, it was ownership. And I think it took all of us a very long, painful journey to finally understand that. After that dinner incident, Linda completely pulled away. No phone calls, no text, no cards for Noah's birthday. At first I felt relief. The silence was peaceful, like I could breathe in my own home again. But after a few months, the peace turned into this strange, hollow quiet. I could tell it was eating at Adam. He'd check his phone constantly, waiting for her to reach out. When she didn't, he started to look lost, like a little boy who didn't know how to make it right. I tried to comfort him. I really did. But it was hard when part of me still resented him for not standing up for me sooner. We started marriage counseling in the spring. Our therapist, a woman named Dr. Harris, helped us unpack everything. The guilt, the resentment, the misplaced loyalties. There were sessions where I cried so hard I could barely talk. Others where Adam finally admitted that he'd been raised to keep the peace with his mom at all costs because his dad was emotionally abusive and controlling. That hit me hard. I realized Adam wasn't just scared of losing his mom. He was scared of losing control. To him, keeping her calm meant keeping the world from exploding. It made me see him differently. Not as weak, but as conditioned. Still, I told him conditioning doesn't excuse hurting the people you love. He agreed. We made progress. Slow, painful progress. But it was something. Then, out of nowhere in late summer, Linda showed up, not at the house, but at Noah's daycare again. She didn't try to take him, thank God. She just showed up with a gift bag, saying she wanted to drop off something for his birthday. The staff called me right away, since they remembered the previous incident. I rushed there, my heart pounding. She looked so different, thinner, grayer, and visibly nervous. She smiled when she saw me, but it wasn't the smug, superior smile I was used to. It was trembling. "Please don't call the police," she said softly. "I just wanted to see him. I'm not here to cause trouble." I stood there for a minute, torn between anger and pity. I told her she couldn't keep showing up unannounced, that boundaries still existed, and that I'd appreciate it if she respected them. She nodded, then handed me the bag. Inside was a small stuffed bunny and a handwritten letter addressed to Noah. I took it home and read it alone later that night. The letter broke me a little. She wrote about how she'd lost her own mother young and never really dealt with it. How she'd attached herself too strongly to Adam, and later to Noah. How she thought being called Mama was a way of keeping her heart safe, because it made her feel needed again. She actually apologized, not a manipulative, half-hearted one, but a real one. She said she understood now that she wasn't Noah's mother, that she'd been overstepping for years, and that she'd ruined her relationship with all of us because she didn't know when to let go. At the end, she wrote, "I won't ask to be part of his life unless you and Adam both agree. I just want you to know that I am truly sorry. I didn't mean to take something from you. I just didn't realize it was never mine to begin with." I sat there crying, holding that letter for a long time. When I showed it to Adam, he cried too, like full body, shaking kind of crying. We decided to reach out and meet her somewhere public. A park. I didn't want Noah there yet, but I was willing to talk. Linda was quiet the whole time. She didn't argue or try to justify anything. She just listened. She said she was in therapy now, trying to work on her attachment issues. She even said, "You don't ever have to forgive me, but I want to earn a place in your trust again, not demand one." It was surreal. We agreed to let her see Noah again, slowly, supervised, at our home, with clear rules. She followed them. No mama, no overstepping, no unannounced visits. She brought small gifts like coloring books and snacks. And for the first time ever, she didn't undermine me. It's been nearly 6 months of that now, and things are, I can't believe I'm saying this, peaceful. Noah knows her as Grandma Linda. He lights up when he sees her, and she doesn't make it weird anymore. She calls me sweetheart again, the way she used to before all the chaos started. And Adam? He's different now too. He's more present, more protective of us. He's learned to stand up to her when needed. We still have scars, though. Sometimes, when I tuck Noah in at night and he calls me Mommy, I remember the days when I thought I'd lose that. It still makes me emotional, but I've learned something important through all of this. Motherhood isn't just about giving birth. It's about being the constant. The person who shows up every day, no matter what, and no one can take that from me. Linda may have crossed 1,000 lines, but in doing so, she taught me where mine truly are. So, can I say I've forgiven her? Maybe not completely, but I'm learning to let go of the hate, because in the end, she's still part of Noah's story, and so am I. And this time, everyone finally knows their place in it. Stories number 5. He wants our daughter baptized, and I don't know how to tell him I can't do it just for him. When I first met Daniel, one of the things I loved most about him was how grounded he seemed. He had this calm, steady way about him, like nothing could really shake him. I come from a family that's always been a little messy, full of loud arguments, last-minute decisions, and people changing their minds every 5 minutes. Daniel was the opposite. Organized, consistent, thoughtful, and yeah, religious, but not in an overbearing way. When we started dating, his faith was just part of who he was. He went to church most Sundays, prayed before meals, and volunteered at the community center his church ran downtown. I grew up without much religion. My parents, Julie and Tom, are more spiritual than religious. The universe has a plan type. So when Daniel and I got serious, I tried to learn about his beliefs. I went to church with him a few times. I even joined him for Easter one year and thought it was nice. Actually, but things changed when our daughter, Emily, was born last year. Daniel was amazing during the pregnancy. Supportive, patient, all of it. We talked about parenting constantly. The topic of religion came up a few times, but I think we both assumed we'd just figure it out later. I didn't want to argue while pregnant, and he didn't want to push. Fast forward to now. Emily's turning 1 next month, and Daniel brought up baptism a few weeks ago. Not casually, not as a "what do you think" kind of thing. It was more of a, we should start planning her baptism soon, and my stomach dropped. I didn't say no right away, I just said, I'm not sure how I feel about that. He looked genuinely confused. What do you mean? He asked. I told him I didn't want to baptize Emily, that I didn't feel comfortable making a religious decision for her when she can't even talk yet, and that I'd rather let her decide for herself when she's older. He looked like I'd just told him I wanted to rename her Satan. He said, You don't have to believe it, but it's important to me. It's about giving her a foundation, I said. A foundation in what? Something she might not even want? That's when things started spiraling. For context, Daniel's family, especially his mom, Linda, are very traditional Catholics. Sweet people, but intense about religion. They already sent us a little white baptism dress for when the time comes, which I politely stored in a box. His mom calls every few weeks to ask if we've set a date. She even said once, You don't want to risk her soul. Honey, every time I hear that, something inside me bristles. Daniel told me it's not about control or fear for him. It's about tradition. He said it's something generations of his family have done. His grandparents, his parents, him. It's not about forcing her to be Catholic, he said. It's about welcoming her into the family's faith. I told him that might sound beautiful to him, but to me, it feels like assigning her something she didn't choose. He said I was overthinking it. That word, overthinking, stuck with me. It's not overthinking to want my daughter to grow up knowing she has a choice, to want her to explore, ask questions, figure out who she is. I don't want to take that from her before she can even walk. The argument stretched over weeks. We'd go a few days pretending everything was fine, and then he'd bring it up again, one night after dinner. He said quietly, If we don't do this, my mom's going to think we're rejecting her. I told him that wasn't my problem, that we're raising our daughter, not his mom's. He didn't yell, he just said, You don't understand what family means to me. That one cut deep. We haven't really talked about it in a week, but there's this quiet tension hanging over everything. We still do bedtime together, still laugh when Emily makes her little dinosaur noises, but sometimes I catch him staring off, like he's trying to solve a puzzle he doesn't have all the pieces for. Last weekend, we were at his parents' house for Sunday lunch. It was one of those picture-perfect moments. Sunlight streaming through the window, Emily giggling in her high chair, everyone passing around dishes. Then Linda brought out a silver cross necklace, tiny and delicate, and said, This will be perfect for her baptism. The room went quiet. I could feel Daniel's eyes on me. I smiled politely and said, It's beautiful. Maybe she can wear it when she's older? Linda looked confused. Older? But the baptism, Daniel jumped in fast. We're still figuring out the details. Mom, we didn't talk the whole car ride home that night, I asked him. Do you really think I'm a bad mom because I don't want to baptize her? He looked surprised. Of course not. I just think you're letting fear get in the way. And maybe he's right. But my fear isn't about religion. It's about losing myself, losing my voice in our marriage, and setting a precedent that when it comes to big decisions, his faith trumps my boundaries. I told him I'd go to church with him again, for him. I'd even let Emily come when she's older if she's curious. But I won't do the baptism. Not just to make everyone else comfortable. He nodded, said he needed time to think. That was a week ago. He's been quieter since. Not cold, just distant. Like he's trying to make peace with something he doesn't agree with. And I keep wondering if this is one of those things that breaks couples, not because of the act itself, but because of what it represents. I love him. I love our daughter. But I can't baptize her for the sake of keeping the peace. I can't lie about what I believe just to avoid conflict. Sometimes love means saying no, even when it hurts both of you. I just wish it didn't feel like losing something sacred in the process. It's been about 3 months since I first posted about the baptism argument, and things have evolved, but not in the way I expected. After that last conversation with Daniel, where he said he needed time to think, we kind of drifted into this unspoken truce. We didn't mention the word baptism for weeks. We focused on day-to-day stuff, teething, diaper blowouts, work deadlines. It felt like we were both afraid to poke at a bruise that hadn't stopped aching. Then one night, while we were watching TV after putting Emily to bed, he muted the show and said, I talked to Pastor Mark. I froze. He said he'd told Mark about our disagreement. how he wanted Emily baptized and I didn't. Mark apparently told him that faith should never be forced, and that any act done without peace between parents doesn't honor the spirit of it anyway. Daniel said that last part like he didn't quite believe it but was trying to. I thought that would be the end of it. Then, a few days later, his mom Linda called me. I could tell she was trying so hard to sound nice. She said, "Sweetheart, I know you weren't raised with faith, but this is really just a blessing. It's not a big deal," I wanted to say. "It is a big deal, Linda. It's a choice about my daughter." But instead, I just said, "We're still talking about it." That same week, Daniel's sister Hannah invited us to her son's baptism. I think she did it deliberately, maybe hoping it would inspire me. Sitting through the ceremony was complicated, I'll admit. It was sweet watching everyone smile and take pictures, and the priest said some genuinely kind words about love and guidance. For a brief moment, I even wondered if maybe I was being stubborn. But then I saw how Daniel was watching me the whole time, like he was silently saying, "See, this could be us." The drive home was quiet. When we got back, I finally said, "I don't want to feel like I'm being pressured into something sacred. If I ever say yes, I want it to mean something, not because everyone cornered me." He didn't say anything for a long time. Then he just said, "I get it, but it still hurts." That night, I cried in the bathroom after putting Emily to bed. I felt guilty. Not because of religion, but because I knew I was standing between Daniel and something that clearly mattered to him. The next week, I decided to do something small. Not as a compromise, but as a gesture of good faith. I found a children's book about world religions, full of simple explanations and bright pictures. I bought it and told Daniel, "When she's older, I want us to read things like this together. I want her to know why you believe what you do, and why some people believe differently." He actually smiled, said, "That's really thoughtful." We didn't fix everything overnight, but something shifted. He started opening up about why baptism mattered so much to him. It wasn't just family tradition, it was fear. He said he grew up with this deep sense that if he didn't pass on his faith, he'd be failing his parents and his community. He admitted that part of him still hears his mom's voice in his head saying, "You can't raise a child without God." I told him I understood the pressure, but I wouldn't let Emily's childhood be dictated by anyone's guilt. Not his, not mine, not his mother's. We both cried that night. Since then, Daniel's been softer. He still goes to church, sometimes with Emily if I'm working or running errands, but there's no more pushing, no more guilt trips. Linda, on the other hand, hasn't fully let it go. She still drops comments like, "Maybe she'll change her mind when Emily starts talking," or, "I'll keep that little white dress just in case." I've learned to just smile and change the subject. The real turning point came last weekend, though. We were at a picnic with some of Daniel's church friends, and one of them asked when Emily's baptism was. Before I could even open my mouth, Daniel said, "We decided to wait until she's older and can choose for herself." The guy looked surprised and said, "Oh, really?" Daniel just shrugged and said, "Yeah, we both agreed it should be her choice. That feels right for our family." I can't even describe the relief I felt hearing that. Later, as we were packing up, I hugged him and whispered, "Thank you." He kissed my forehead and said, "We're a team, right? Even when it's hard." And that's the thing. This whole fight wasn't really about religion. It was about partnership, respect, and trust. We both wanted to do right by Emily. We just had different ideas of what that looked like. Now, when I watch Daniel rock her to sleep, softly humming church hymns he grew up with, I don't feel that tug of tension anymore. It's peaceful, because I know he's not doing it to push anything on her. He's just sharing a part of himself. We still don't know if Emily will ever want to be baptized. Maybe she will, maybe she won't, but whatever she decides, she'll know her parents gave her the freedom to choose. And that's the kind of faith I can believe in. It's been nearly 5 years since that whole baptism storm, and reading back over what I wrote feels like opening an old journal. The kind that still smells faintly of the person you used to be. Our daughter Emily is now 5.5, all freckles and messy curls and curiosity. She's at that age where everything is a question. Why does the moon follow us? Who made the first sandwich? Why do people go to church? That last one came up on a quiet Sunday morning a few months ago. Daniel was getting ready to head to service, and Emily looked at him and asked, "Daddy, are you going to talk to God again?" He laughed and said, "Kind of. Want to come with me?" She looked at me, like she always does when she's unsure. And I said, "You can if you want, or you can stay here with me and make pancakes." She thought about it, very seriously, and said, "Can I go next time?" Daniel just smiled and said, "Of course." That moment, small as it was, told me everything I needed to know about how far we've come. There was no tension, no hidden pressure, no quiet argument waiting to happen, just choice over the years. Daniel's faith softened, not weakened, just changed shape. It stopped being a rule book and started being something quieter, more internal. He still goes to church, but he doesn't flinch if I don't. He even stopped correcting me when I refer to holidays as winter break instead of Christmas break. It's funny, that small detail used to start entire arguments. As for his family, that's been a journey. Linda eventually realized the baptism wasn't happening. The day she accepted it, or at least stopped bringing it up, was last Easter. We were at her house, surrounded by kids running around looking for eggs. She handed Emily a basket and said, "Well, you're my little blessing." Baptized or not, it was her way of letting go. I think I caught Daniel's eye across the yard, and we both smiled. It had taken years, but peace had finally settled in. Meanwhile, Emily has developed this hilarious fascination with rituals. Not religion necessarily, rituals. She loves lighting candles when the power goes out, insists on wishing before blowing dandelions, and says she has quiet thoughts before bed. The other night, she asked if it was okay that she talks to her grandpa, in her head sometimes. Daniel's dad passed before she was born. I told her that's more than okay. After she went to bed, Daniel said, "You know, I think she already has faith, just her own kind." That hit me hard because it was true. It's the kind of faith that isn't taught in Sunday school. Faith in love, in connection, in the things we can't quite see but feel anyway. And funny enough, I think I've found my own version of that too. When I first wrote about the baptism, I thought the issue was religion. I thought we were two people divided by belief. But I've learned it was never about that. It was about control, fear, and learning how to build something that isn't a 50-50 split but a 100-100 commitment. Daniel and I grew up in totally different worlds. He in a Southern Christian family, me in a household where faith meant hoping the rent cleared. But somewhere between the baby bottles and late-night compromises, we learned how to build a middle ground that felt sacred in its own way. A few weeks ago, we went to a family wedding, and Emily saw the little church they got married in. She tugged my hand and whispered, "Is that where people get water on their heads?" I nodded, smiling, and said, "Yeah, sometimes." She thought for a moment, then said, "I think I'll do that when I'm big. But not yet. I'm still learning about stuff." Daniel squeezed my hand when he heard that, not because she said she wanted it, but because she said she'd decide when she was ready. That night, after we put her to bed, Daniel and I sat on the porch with a glass of wine each. He looked at me and said, "You know, I think this was the right call. She's growing up curious, not scared." I nodded. "That's all I ever wanted." He smiled and said, "Me too." It wasn't some grand cinematic ending, no thunderclap of understanding, no sermon or epiphany, just two people sitting on a porch, realizing that what they built together mattered more than what they didn't agree on. And I think that's what love, and maybe even faith, really is. Not perfect alignment, but a shared promise to try, to listen, and to keep choosing each other even when the paths don't perfectly overlap. So no, Emily still isn't baptized. Maybe she will be one day, maybe she won't. Either way, she's growing up in a home full of kindness, respect, and freedom. And that feels holier than anything I could have imagined 5 years ago. Stories number 6. Would I be wrong for not giving back the 40K towel my aunt gave me because she said she won't need it after the rapture? I'm 27, and this whole thing has gotten out of hand fast. A few months ago, my Aunt Linda, who's in her late 50s, gave me $40,000. She told me it was a gift, not a loan. She said she'd been saving money for years for the Lord's work, but recently decided that I was part of that purpose. To give some background, Aunt Linda is my mom's older sister, and she's been very religious for as long as I can remember. Not just church on Sundays religious, more like the kind who believes the world is ending every other year. When I was a kid, she'd warn me about signs of the end times, stockpile canned food, and tell us to keep our hearts ready for the trumpet. I've always loved her. Though she's kind in her own way, just intense. Back in February, she came over to visit me and my fiancé, Josh. She brought a casserole as usual, and after dinner she said she had something to tell me. She pulled out a folded envelope, pressed it into my hand, and said, "I prayed on this, and I know what I'm supposed to do." Inside was a cashier's check for $40,000. I thought it was a mistake, I told her. Linda, I can't take this, but she waved me off. She said God told her she wouldn't be needing it because the rapture will be here soon. I tried to laugh it off, but she was serious. She said she wanted me to use it to build a strong future before everything changes. Josh thought the whole thing was absurd. He said, if she's of sound mind and says it's a gift, it's a gift. I didn't cash it right away. I felt weird. But after a week of her calling to make sure I'd followed God's instruction, I finally did. We'd been saving for a down payment, and that check made it possible to buy our house. I still felt uneasy, but she was thrilled when I told her. She said, "Good. Now I know I listened to the Lord." For a while, everything was fine. Then last month, she called out of nowhere, crying. Apparently, her church had a falling out, and her pastor moved to another state. She decided not to go with him, and started attending a new church that opened her eyes. Suddenly, she's convinced the rapture isn't happening for a while, and now she wants the money back. She told me, "The Lord spoke to me again, and I realize I made a mistake giving that to you. That money was meant for my mission work." I tried to stay calm. I reminded her that she said it was a gift. She replied, "It was, but under false understanding. You have to do the right thing now that I've repented." Josh said absolutely not. He told her it wasn't a loan, and that we already used it for the down payment. But she won't let it go. She's been calling daily, sometimes crying, sometimes guilt-tripping. She even told my mom that I'm stealing from the Lord. My mom's caught in the middle. She told me she doesn't think I have to return it, but she also said it might be the Christian thing to do. I'm not religious. I respect my family's faith, but I don't share it. I didn't ask for this money. I tried to refuse it, she insisted. It's not like I can just hand it back either. We used almost all of it for the down payment. We've got maybe a few thousand in savings now, and I'm not selling our house to reverse something she did of her own free will. Last week, Aunt Linda showed up at our door with her friend from church, a woman named Carol. They prayed on our porch for forgiveness and asked that I soften my heart. Josh asked them to leave, and Linda started crying again, saying she just wanted to make things right before she died. I've stopped answering her calls. I blocked her number for a few days just to get some peace. Then she started emailing me Bible verses, stuff about greed and laying up treasures on earth. My mom finally called me yesterday and said Linda's been telling other relatives that I stole from her. Now my uncle, who barely talks to anyone, called to ask, "What's going on with the inheritance money?" I didn't even know how to respond. The part that's tearing me up is that I know Aunt Linda isn't malicious. She's always been like this, throwing herself into religious movements and then backpedaling when she decides they were wrong. She's lost money to shady televangelists before. She's not rich, but she's always been generous, sometimes to a fault. I also know she's getting older and maybe a bit lonely. Since her husband died 3 years ago, she's been searching for purpose. I think that's why she gets caught up in all these signs of the times beliefs. Josh says that if I give her anything back, it'll just reinforce her pattern of impulsive giving and guilt. He's probably right, but I still feel bad. $40,000 is a huge amount. I can't imagine being in her shoes and regretting that decision so deeply. I did talk to a lawyer friend, just to understand my position legally. He said that since it was clearly stated as a gift, and there's no documentation calling it a loan, she has no legal claim to it. But he also warned me that if she tries to take it to small claims court, I'll still have to show proof that it was a gift, not a loan. I have texts from her saying, "It's yours now, and don't question God's blessings." So I think I'm fine legally, but emotionally, this has become a nightmare. Now she's saying she might pray for guidance to take this to court. I honestly don't think she'd follow through, but she's unpredictable. My mom keeps telling me to find a compromise, but I don't even know what that would look like. It's not like I can give her $40K. I could maybe scrape together a few thousand as a gesture. But Josh says that's just opening the door for her to expect more later. I keep thinking about that night she handed me the envelope. She was so calm, so sure she was doing something right. I didn't see manipulation, I saw conviction. Now I just see confusion and desperation. If she really believes she wouldn't need it, and I didn't trick her or ask for it, does that make me responsible for fixing her mistake? It's been months of this and I'm exhausted. Josh said maybe I should just stop explaining myself and let her be angry. But I know how she is. She'll stew in guilt and spiral deeper into whatever religious panic she's in next. I feel like no matter what I do, I'm going to be the villain in her story, and I'm not sure how to live with that. It's been a few months since I first posted about the whole situation with my aunt, and the $40,000. And honestly, things have gone from confusing to straight up surreal. After that whole scene where she showed up at my house with her church friend, I went no contact for about a month. I told my mom I needed a break from the drama, and Josh was adamant that if I caved even a little, it would spiral. We blocked her on everything: calls, texts, even social media. It felt weird, like I was icing out a family member. But the stress had gotten to the point where I couldn't sleep without dreading another guilt-filled voicemail. For a while it was quiet. Too quiet. Then out of nowhere, my cousin Amanda, her daughter, called me. Amanda and I haven't been close since we were teenagers, but she sounded uneasy. She told me Linda had been going around to relatives and members of her new church, saying that I stole the inheritance and used it to buy a mansion. Amanda knew it sounded ridiculous, so she called me to get the truth. When I explained what actually happened, how her mom gave it to me voluntarily and told me it was a gift, Amanda just sighed and said, "Yeah, that tracks. She's on another one of her visions from God cycles." Apparently, Aunt Linda's been reinterpreting things again, and now she's convinced that the devil influenced her generosity. That phrase made my stomach drop. It's one thing for her to regret what she did, but to call me the devil's influence? That hit differently. Amanda said she's been trying to talk sense into her mom, but it's like talking to a wall. Linda's new pastor, different from her last one, apparently told her that material attachments are trials from Satan, and that reclaiming what is rightfully God's is an act of faith. So now she's taken that to mean she has to get the money back to make things right with the Lord. I wish I were exaggerating, but she literally tried to file a small claims case against me. I got served a few weeks later. It wasn't exactly official in the sense that she had any evidence, but it was real enough that I had to go through the hassle of talking to a lawyer again. Luckily, I still had those texts where she called it a gift. My lawyer, who's a friend of Josh's named Daniel, told me not to panic, that she didn't have a leg to stand on, but it still hurt. Sitting there, reading through those court papers, realizing that my aunt was actually willing to drag me into a courtroom over something she chose to do, it stung in a way I can't even describe. My mom was furious when she found out. She called Linda and told her flat out that she was embarrassing the family. That led to a huge blow-up between them. And now my mom and Linda aren't speaking either. Mom said she's done being patient with her delusions. The case never went anywhere. It got dismissed before it even made it to a hearing. But the damage was done. After that, I decided to write Linda a letter. Not a mean one, just something direct and honest. I told her I loved her, that I was sorry she was hurting, but that I couldn't fix what she'd done. I told her I wasn't angry, just sad that it came to this. I even quoted some of her own words back to her, the ones where she said she didn't need it because the Lord would provide. I didn't expect a response. About 2 weeks later, she sent me one back. It was 3 handwritten pages, filled with scripture and reflections. The first half read like a sermon, but the second half broke me a little. She wrote that she'd been tested by her faith, that she let fear replace trust, and that she was sorry for letting earthly confusion turn her against family. She didn't exactly apologize, but it was the closest she's ever come to admitting fault. Then near the end she wrote, "Keep the money. Maybe it really was meant to help you after all. Maybe I was just the middleman." I didn't know whether to cry or sigh in relief. Josh read it over my shoulder and said, "That's about as close to closure as you're going to get. We haven't spoken since then, but I know she's okay. Amanda told me she's back to volunteering at a local food pantry and seems calmer. She switched churches again, this time to one that's apparently less fire and brimstone. The family, though, is still split. Some cousins think I should have given at least part of the money back. Others think I handled it right. I've learned to just let people think what they want. But here's the thing that keeps looping in my head. I think Aunt Linda genuinely believed she was doing something divine. And when her belief system shifted, she didn't know how to process the regret. So she turned it into guilt and projected it at me. It's strange, realizing that someone can hurt you so deeply without ever meaning to. I don't hate her. I really don't. If she called tomorrow, I'd answer, but I'd also have boundaries this time. I wouldn't let her financial decisions or spiritual crises bleed into my life again. Josh and I are still in that house she helped us buy. Every time I walk past the living room, I think about how weird it is that something built out of confusion, fear, and faith could also become something good. That money gave us stability. It gave us a home. It also taught me a hard truth. That generosity without clarity can destroy relationships just as easily as greed can. If Aunt Linda ever visits again, I'll make her coffee, hug her, and thank her for what she gave me. Not just the money, but the lesson that followed. It's been one of the messiest, most emotionally draining experiences of my life, but somehow, I think we both came out of it changed for the better. It's been almost a year since everything went down with Aunt Linda and the $40,000, and I can finally say things have started to settle. Though it's taken a lot of uncomfortable conversations and more emotional distance than I ever expected to have with family. After that last letter she sent, the one where she told me to keep the money and said maybe it was meant to help me, I decided to take it at face value and leave it there. I didn't reach out after that, and she didn't either. We sort of drifted into a polite silence. My mom was relieved, Josh was relieved, and I think deep down I was too, but time has a funny way of forcing things to resurface. About 3 months ago, my cousin Amanda invited everyone to her daughter's second birthday party. It was the first big family event since the court mess, and she specifically called me to say Aunt Linda would be there. I hesitated, but Amanda sounded genuinely hopeful. She said, "I think Mom's finally back to herself." Josh encouraged me to go. He said maybe it would help me get real closure. Not just the kind that lives in a letter. So we went. Walking into Amanda's house that day felt weirdly nerve-wracking. You'd think I was meeting an ex or something. I saw Aunt Linda almost immediately. She was standing by the kitchen island, laughing with a group of people. Her hair was shorter, and she looked calmer. When she saw me, her face froze for a second. But then she smiled, a small, uncertain one, and walked over. "Hey, sweetheart," she said. Her voice was quiet, like she didn't want to spook me. "Hey, Aunt Linda," I said back. We stood there awkwardly for a few seconds before she asked about the house. I told her it was good, that Josh had built a small garden out back and we'd finally finished paying off one of the smaller renovation loans. She smiled and said, "I'm glad. You two deserved a home." It wasn't an apology, but it was something later. While everyone else was outside watching Amanda's husband grill, Linda and I ended up sitting in the living room together. She asked if she could say something without it turning into a fight. I nodded. She said she'd spent a lot of time praying and realizing how much fear had driven her behavior. Not faith. She told me she'd gotten swept up by people who made her believe the world was ending, and when it didn't, she felt lost. I thought if I gave everything away, I was proving I trusted God, she said. But I was really just trying to control my fear. I didn't interrupt. I just listened. She told me she still regrets how she handled it. Not the giving part, but the aftermath. "I made you the villain in my story," she said, "and you didn't deserve that." That was the first time she'd ever said something close to "I'm sorry." And when she said it, she started crying. Not a dramatic kind of cry, but quiet, almost embarrassed tears. I didn't know what to do, so I just hugged her. I think we both needed that. Since then, things have been cautiously okay. We talk maybe once a month. She'll send me a text asking about work, or I'll ask how Amanda's kids are doing. It's small talk, but it's peaceful. No more talk of visions, no more guilt trips, no more weird religious reasoning. She's still a woman of faith, but it's grounded now. She even started therapy. Amanda told me her pastor encouraged it. Mom eventually made up with her too, though she made it clear she wouldn't tolerate any more spiritual nonsense that involves lawsuits. They're not as close as they used to be, but they're speaking again. That's progress in itself. As for me and Josh, the whole situation left a mark. It made me more cautious about family and money, that's for sure. I also started going to therapy for a bit because I realized how much guilt I'd been carrying. Not for taking the money, but for holding boundaries. I always thought saying no to family made you selfish. Turns out, sometimes it's the only way to stay sane. The money's long gone now, spent on the down payment, repairs, and saving for emergencies. But every time I walk through our house, I think about how complicated its foundation really is. It's not just wood and nails and drywall. It's confusion, faith, regret, forgiveness, all tangled up in the walls. The weirdest part? I think Aunt Linda knows that too. A few weeks ago, she sent me a photo in the mail. It was of her and my late grandfather, back when she was in her 20s. On the back she wrote, "Remember, not all gifts are about the thing itself. Some are about what we learn after." It wasn't signed, but I didn't need it to be. We're not completely healed. I don't think families ever really are. But I do think we've both learned how to stop trying to rewrite the past and just accept what it gave us. So yeah, if you'd told me a year ago that we'd be back on speaking terms, I'd have laughed in your face. But somehow here we are. Not perfect. Not even close. But finally at peace. And honestly, that's enough. Stories number 7. I cheated on my fiancée at my bachelorette party. And I don't know how to move forward. I never thought I'd be the kind of person who'd end up in this position. You hear stories, you watch drama unfold in movies or online, and you think, that would never be me. And then one night, one stupid, alcohol-fueled, chaotic night changes everything. I'm 27, and I've been with my fiancé, Mark, for 5 years. We met in college. He was in mechanical engineering. I was studying early childhood education. He was the kind of guy who brought me coffee before my exams, remembered my mom's birthday, and never raised his voice even when he was angry. The kind of man you marry, everyone said so. Our relationship wasn't perfect, but it was stable, steady, real. We didn't have those fireworks some couples brag about, but we had something better. Or so I thought. A home, a future, and this quiet kind of love that made me feel safe. Our wedding was planned for early summer, a small one in Vermont with family and close friends. Everything was ready. The venue, the photographer, the dress, and then came the bachelorette party. My best friend and maid of honor, Leah, organized it. She's wild, funny, and completely different from me. She loves chaos. I love control. She promised it would just be a fun night out in Nashville with the girls. Dancing, karaoke, nothing too crazy. I trusted her. The night started harmlessly enough. Dinner, too many cocktails, and a few questionable dares. We laughed so much my cheeks hurt. Then Leah decided we should go to this rooftop club her cousin recommended. It was packed, loud, and buzzing with that kind of energy that makes you feel invincible. Somewhere around midnight, a group of guys joined us. They were friendly, flirty, and apparently in town for a bachelor party. One of them, his name was Nate, started talking to me. He was tall, tattooed, with one of those smiles that made you forget what you were saying mid-sentence. I remember thinking he wasn't even my type. But there was something intoxicating about how confidently he looked at me. How present he was. I hadn't felt like that in a long time. Like someone was fully seeing me. We danced. I shouldn't have. But I did. It started innocent, then not so much. His hands found my waist, my neck. I remember flashes. The neon lights. Leah laughing nearby, someone taking shots, and then nothing clear. The next morning, I woke up in a hotel room, my head pounding, my heart racing. Nate was next to me, naked. I don't remember everything, but I remember enough. I threw up, then cried, then sat on the bathroom floor for over an hour trying to figure out what I had just done. My phone had 13 missed calls from Leah. When I finally called her back, she sounded panicked. She'd realized I never made it back to our Airbnb and had been calling all night. When I told her what happened, she went quiet. Then she said, "Okay, you're going to take a shower, come back here, and we'll figure this out." But how do you figure out something like that? When I got back, the girls were silent. No one said anything for a long time. Then Leah finally told me I should just forget it happened. "What Mark doesn't know won't hurt him," she said. "It was one night, a mistake. Don't destroy your life over it." That sentence has been haunting me since. When I got home, Mark met me at the airport with flowers. He kissed me, told me how much he missed me, and helped with my luggage. I smiled, said I missed him too, and tried not to fall apart. It's been 2 weeks since then. 2 weeks of pretending everything is fine. I go through the motions, dress fittings, seating charts, cake tastings. And I can barely look at him without my stomach twisting in guilt. I've thought about telling him 100 times. I even tried once. But when I started to, he wrapped his arms around me and said, "Whatever it is, we'll get through it." And I just couldn't. I chickened out. The guilt is destroying me. I can't eat, I can't sleep. Every time he says "I love you," it feels like a lie I'm forcing him to believe. Leah keeps telling me to let it go. She says people make mistakes, that I was drunk, that it doesn't define me, but it does. It changed something in me. I look in the mirror and I don't recognize myself. To make things worse, Nate has tried texting me. Twice, just, "Hey, you okay?" And I had a great time. I blocked him, but the damage was already done. It made me realize that to him, it was just another story, a wild night with a stranger. But to me, it shattered everything. The wedding is in 3 weeks. I don't know what to do. Do I confess and destroy the life we built? Or marry him and live with this secret forever? I've tried imagining both paths, and both feel like punishment. If I tell him, he'll never trust me again. He'll look at me differently. And I'll lose not just my fiancé but my best friend, his family, my future. But if I don't, then I'm lying every day for the rest of my life. I can't even tell my mom or sister. They adore Mark. They'd never forgive me. Last night I was lying in bed beside him while he slept. He had his arm around me, the same way he's done for years. And I started crying silently. He stirred a bit and whispered, "You okay?" I said, "Yeah, just wedding stress." He smiled, kissed my shoulder, and went back to sleep. And I laid there, staring at the ceiling, wondering when I became the kind of person who could betray someone like him. The truth is, I don't know if I deserve to marry him. I don't know if I'll ever deserve forgiveness, or if I should even ask for it. All I know is that I wish I could go back to that night and tell myself to just go home, to not have that one last drink, to not let loneliness and attention cloud my judgment. But I can't. Now I have to live with what I did. And I don't know how. It's been 4 months since I wrote that first post, and I feel like an entirely different person. Or maybe just a person stripped down to all the ugliest truths. When I posted, the wedding was 3 weeks away, and I was falling apart inside while pretending everything was fine. Well, the wedding never happened. About 2 weeks before the big day, I woke up in the middle of the night next to Mark, shaking. I don't even remember what dream I had. I just remember feeling like I couldn't breathe. It was like the weight of what I'd done finally decided to crush me all at once. I got out of bed and sat on the floor in the hallway, sobbing quietly so I wouldn't wake him. But of course he did. He came out half asleep and saw me crying. He thought I was having a panic attack about wedding stress. And for a moment, I almost let him believe that. But then he knelt down next to me, and the way he looked at me, so gentle, so concerned, it broke something in me. I said, "Mark, there's something I need to tell you," and I did. I told him everything. The bachelorette party, Nate, waking up in that hotel room, the panic, the shame. I told him I didn't even remember all of it, that it wasn't planned, that I'd been drinking too much, all of it. He didn't say anything at first. He just stared at me, like he was trying to figure out if this was real. Then he stood up, walked to the kitchen, and just sat there for a while. The silence was unbearable. I wanted to go to him, but I didn't know if I even had the right. Finally, he said, "You could have told me weeks ago." And that's when I really lost it, because he was right. I'd been lying every day since, every kiss, every "I love you," every plan about our future. All of it was tainted by the fact that I already knew what I'd done. He didn't yell. That's what made it worse. He just said, "I need you to go stay somewhere else for a while." I packed a bag that night and went to stay with Leah. She looked terrified when she saw me at her door. She asked if I'd told him. And when I said yes, she just whispered, "Oh, God." She tried to comfort me, but even she seemed distant, like my guilt had finally caught up, and no one wanted to stand too close to it. Mark didn't contact me for over a week. His sister Amy texted me once to say he was staying with their parents and that he needed space. That was all. I didn't blame him. Then, 2 weeks before what would have been our wedding, he came over. I thought maybe he wanted to talk. Maybe there was a chance we could fix it. But when he sat down, he was calm, cold almost. He said, "I canceled everything. The venue, the photographer, the catering. You'll get your deposits back." He'd done it all without telling me, like he'd already accepted that there was nothing left to save. I started crying again, telling him I'd do anything to make it right, to rebuild, to prove I wasn't that person. He just looked at me and said, "You already proved who you are." That sentence will never leave me. He gave me back my engagement ring, told me he didn't hate me, but that he couldn't look at me without replaying that night in his head, that the trust was gone, and once it's gone, you can't force it back. Then he left. I haven't seen him since. The wedding day came and went. I didn't even leave Leah's apartment. My mom called, crying after she found out. I couldn't tell her the full truth, only that the relationship ended suddenly. I think she suspects, but she hasn't asked. My dad doesn't speak to me at all right now. Leah's been supportive, but even she admitted that maybe she shouldn't have pushed so hard for that wild bachelorette weekend. She told me something I'll never forget. That night didn't just end your engagement. It ended the person you were before it, and she's right. For a while I spiraled, drinking too much, avoiding people, hating myself. Then one morning, I woke up and realized I couldn't live like that anymore. I started therapy, something I should have done years ago. My therapist, Janet, has helped me unpack why that night happened. She said what I did wasn't just about temptation. It was about emptiness. About not being honest with myself or with Mark about what I was missing emotionally. It doesn't excuse it. Nothing ever will. But understanding it helped me start forgiving myself. Slowly, painfully, I haven't dated since I don't think I could. I'm still learning how to be someone I can live with. I deleted all social media for a while because seeing everyone's engagement photos, weddings, babies, it hurt too much, but lately, I've been trying to rebuild a life that's just mine. I started volunteering at a youth center, picked up painting again, and even signed up for a community yoga class. Little things, Mark. From what I've heard through mutual friends, moved out of state for a new job. I doubt I'll ever hear from him again. And maybe that's for the best. If I could talk to him one last time, I think I'd just say thank you for loving me the way he did, for showing me what real trust looked like, and for walking away when I destroyed it, because that's what forced me to finally face myself. I know a lot of people reading this probably think I deserve every ounce of pain I've felt since that night. And maybe I do, but I also know now that people can do terrible things and still want to be better. I can't undo what I did, but I can make sure I never become that version of myself again. Maybe that's not redemption, but it's something. It's been a year and 3 months since I wrote that update. And if you told me back then that I'd be sitting here now, writing from a tiny apartment in Portland with my morning coffee, sunlight streaming through the window and actual peace in my chest, I wouldn't have believed you. I spent most of last year quietly rebuilding myself from the inside out. After the wedding fell apart, I went through this phase where I wanted to erase every trace of my old life. Deleted photos, donated gifts, even changed my phone number. I thought if I could just delete enough of the past, I could delete the guilt, but life doesn't work like that. The truth followed me for months. I would still wake up in the middle of the night thinking about the look on Mark's face when I told him what I did. The silence that fell between us, that's the kind of silence that never fully leaves your memory, but I learned to sit with it. My therapist helped me understand that forgiveness, especially self-forgiveness, isn't a single moment. It's something you do every day. Like brushing your teeth or making your bed, it's maintenance. In March, I finally moved out of the city where everything happened. Leah had gotten engaged to someone genuinely kind, and she was nervous to tell me because she didn't want to hurt my feelings. But honestly, I was happy for her. It was weirdly freeing to celebrate someone else's love without feeling like I was crumbling inside. Her happiness reminded me that love can be clean and honest. It doesn't always have to be tangled with guilt. I got a job as a marketing coordinator at a small eco-brand company here in Portland. It's nothing glamorous, but it's steady and creative. And for the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm building something that's mine. My coworkers are kind, quirky people who don't know my history, and there's something beautiful about being able to introduce myself without the shadow of my mistake following me. I still think about Mark sometimes, not obsessively, but in flashes, like when I hear a song we used to sing in the car, or when I pass a store that sells the brand of cologne he wore. For a while, I used to wonder what I'd say if I ever saw him again. Then, about 2 months ago, I actually did. It was at a friend's wedding in Seattle. I hadn't realized he'd be there. Mutual friend group overlap. I was standing near the bar, chatting with a few people, when I heard someone say my name in a voice I hadn't heard in over a year. I turned, and there he was, Mark. He looked good, older maybe, but in that peaceful way people look when they've finally made it through a storm. He had that same calm energy he always carried, but there was a new distance behind his eyes. Not anger, not sadness, just acceptance. For a second I froze. I didn't know if I should walk away or say something. But he smiled first, just a small, polite smile. So I smiled back. He came over and we talked. Nothing deep, just surface-level stuff. How work was, how his family was doing. He mentioned he'd moved to Denver and had been seeing someone for a while. Her name's Alyssa, he said, and she's really great. I smiled and told him I was happy for him. And I meant it. There was this tiny pause, though, one that hung in the air like a heartbeat. Then he said, "I'm glad you're doing okay." "Jess, I really am." That was it. No lecture, no bitterness. No, you ruined everything. Just those words. And somehow, that was all the closure I needed. After he walked away, I went to the bathroom, looked at myself in the mirror, and cried. But it wasn't the same kind of crying as before. It was relief. The kind that comes when you finally exhale after holding your breath for too long. Since then, I've been lighter. I've started dating again, carefully. I met someone through work. His name's Evan. And it's slow and gentle in a way that feels healing. He knows I've been through something. But I haven't told him the full story yet. I will, eventually. But right now, I'm learning how to exist in something healthy before I unpack the past again. I've also mended some family relationships. My mom and I are closer than we've ever been. She told me one night, "You made a mistake, but you didn't stop being my daughter." That meant more than she'll ever know. My dad is still distant, but he texted me on my birthday this year. Just a simple, "Hope you're doing okay." That was huge. Leah's wedding was last month, and I stood by her side as her maid of honor. At one point, during her vows, I found myself tearing up, not because I was sad, but because I finally understood something. Love isn't about being perfect. It's about honesty, growth, and choosing each other every day. And when you betray that choice, you either let it destroy you, or you learn from it so deeply that it reshapes who you are. I chose the second one. Some nights, I still think about that younger version of me. The one who made that horrible mistake at her own bachelorette party. I don't hate her anymore. I see her as someone who was lost, desperate for validation, terrified of facing her insecurities. And while I'll never excuse what she did, I can finally say I've learned compassion, even for her. I know people online love to paint cheaters as villains, and I get that. I was one. But I've also learned that humans are painfully complex. We hurt, we fail, and sometimes we do things that make us question if we even deserve redemption. But change is possible. If anyone reading this is sitting in the ruins of something they destroyed, I'm not here to justify it. But I am here to say, you can rebuild. You can grow into someone your past self would barely recognize. I did, and though I'll never undo what happened, I've made peace with it. Because for the first time in years, when I look in the mirror, I don't just see the woman who ruined her engagement. I see the woman who survived it, and that's enough. Stories number 8. He forgot my birthday, and somehow I still feel guilty about it. So, this happened a few weeks ago, and I've been sitting with it because part of me feels hurt, part of me feels stupid, and part of me feels like maybe I set myself up for disappointment. I turned 32 last month. Normally, birthdays aren't a big production for me. I've never been the birthday week type or someone who expects a surprise party. I just like something small. Maybe dinner, a cupcake with a candle, a card. It's the gesture that matters, you know? My husband Ryan and I have been married for 6 years. He's good to me mostly. He's not cruel or inattentive in an obvious way, but he gets tunnel vision. He's the kind of guy who will remember a random fact about the engine size in a '97 Mustang, but forget the milk he went to the store for. Or in this case, apparently, his wife's birthday, the week leading up to it. I started noticing he hadn't said anything about plans. I didn't see any packages arriving. No mention of, "What do you want to do this weekend?" Or, "Should we go out Friday night?" But I told myself maybe he had something up his sleeve. Last year he got me a necklace. And he can be sweet when he wants to be. The night before, I was lying in bed next to him and he was scrolling through his phone, laughing at some meme. I thought about saying, "Hey, big day tomorrow." But a petty part of me wanted to see if he'd remember without help. I thought, if he forgets, maybe it'll finally show him how invisible I feel sometimes. So I didn't remind him the next morning. I woke up to him already getting dressed for work. He kissed my forehead and said, "Morning, babe. You want me to grab coffee on my way back?" I just said, "Sure," trying not to sound disappointed. He left, no happy birthday, no card, nothing. I sat there in bed for a minute, staring at the ceiling, and then I started to cry. Not ugly sobbing, just that silent, tight throat kind of crying that makes you feel small. Around noon, I texted my best friend Claire, who's known me since high school. I told her what happened, and she immediately wrote back, "Girl, you better tell him. Don't give him the silent treatment and then resent him later," I wrote back. "No, I want to see how long it takes." That night, Ryan came home with takeout, burgers and fries, and plopped down on the couch next to me. He started talking about some problem at work. I kept waiting for him to notice the quiet, the fact that I wasn't joking back or touching my food. He didn't. He went to bed early. Said he was exhausted. I stayed up until midnight. When the clock hit 12:01, I whispered, "Happy birthday to me," into the dark. The next morning, I couldn't take it anymore. I asked, "Hey, what day is it today?" He blinked, looked at his phone, and then his face just fell. Oh my God, baby. I'm so sorry." He looked genuinely panicked, like he just realized he'd left the oven on for 24 hours. He kept apologizing, kept saying, "I swear, I thought your birthday was next week. I've been so swamped with work." And here's the thing. I believed him. I really did. But believing him didn't make it hurt less. He offered to take me out that night. I said no, I wasn't in the mood. He offered to order a cake. To make up for it over the weekend, I told him I didn't want a pity celebration. For the next couple of days, things were tense. He'd try to be extra nice, doing dishes, bringing me flowers, hugging me more than usual. But it just made me feel weird, like he was trying to erase the moment instead of acknowledging it. A few days later, I was on FaceTime with my mom, Ellen, and she said, "Oh, honey, what did Ryan get you for your birthday?" And I had to say, "He forgot." She looked horrified. My mom adores Ryan, but I could see the disappointment on her face. She said, "Did you remind him?" I said, "No, I didn't think I should have to." She sighed and said, "Men don't think the way we do. You should have just reminded him." That made me angry, not at her, but at the idea that it's somehow my job to manage his awareness of me. Like, I remember his birthday. I remember the anniversary of when his dad passed away, when his big work presentation was, when he needed to call the dentist. Why can't he remember one day for me? Claire told me I was being quietly vindictive. Maybe she's right. I did set him up to fail, a little bit, but also, isn't that part of being seen? That someone should remember without you waving a flag. It's been weeks now, and we've kind of moved past it, but something about it lingers. When he touches my arm or calls me babe, there's this tiny flicker of doubt in my chest. Like, you didn't think about me that day. Last weekend we were at dinner with friends, Evan and Samantha, and birthdays came up. Sam mentioned how Evan always plans something small. Even if it's just breakfast in bed, Ryan looked down at his plate, and I could tell he was thinking about it too. Later in the car he said, "I really messed up, didn't I?" I said, "Yeah, you did." He was quiet for a while, then said, "I don't know how to fix it," and I told him, "You don't, you just, remember next time?" He nodded, and we drove the rest of the way home in silence. Sometimes I still wonder if I overreacted, if I turned an honest mistake into an emotional test he couldn't pass. But then I think about how lonely that day felt, how small I felt sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee and no text. No call, nothing. It wasn't about the presents or the cake. It was about wanting to matter enough that he'd remember without needing a nudge. Maybe that's childish, or maybe it's human, I don't know. It's been almost a year since the birthday incident, and I think it's taken me that long to really figure out how I feel about it. And maybe about my marriage as a whole. After that night in the car, when I told Ryan to just remember next time, something shifted between us. It wasn't dramatic, no shouting, no huge fights. Just this quiet, slightly uncomfortable space that settled in. We were polite, even affectionate, but there was a thin layer of distance that hadn't been there before. For a while, I tried to let it go. I really did, I told myself. It was just a date. People forget things all the time, but the truth is, I couldn't stop thinking about how easily I could vanish into the background of his life. How even something that mattered to me that much could just slip his mind completely. I think the real kicker came a few weeks later. His mom, Ellen, yes, my mom and his mom share a name. That's been confusing from the start. Called to ask if we'd settled our plans for Thanksgiving. I told her we were staying home this year, just the two of us. She said, "Well, at least it'll give you time to reconnect. Ryan told me you were upset about something. But you know how men are, they just need a little grace." That phrase, a little grace, stuck with me, because I realized I'd been giving him grace for years. For forgotten anniversaries, for missed date nights, for showing up late to my work events, for being too tired to talk after long days. Grace had become the default. So I decided to stop expecting, not in a bitter way, but in a self-preserving way. I started planning things for myself. Brunch with Claire, hikes with my coworker Nina, little solo movie dates. I didn't announce them. I just did them, and it felt freeing. When my birthday started creeping up again this year, I didn't mention it. I honestly wanted to see what would happen, but I also made plans. I booked a spa day with Claire and Nina for the weekend, and I told myself that even if Ryan forgot again, I wouldn't spend the day crying on the couch this time. The night before, he was restless. I could tell something was up because he kept checking his phone, then glancing at me around midnight. I saw him sneak out of the bedroom. When I woke up the next morning, the smell of pancakes hit me before I even opened my eyes. He was in the kitchen, humming, flipping pancakes in his old college hoodie. There was a little bouquet of daisies on the counter and a card propped up next to my coffee mug that said, "To my favorite person in the world." The card was simple. No long apology or poetic message, just, "I don't have an excuse. I just have a promise that I'll keep trying to do better. You deserve to be remembered." I cried, like, full-on cried, standing there in my pajamas while he looked at me like he wasn't sure if he should hug me or run. He said, I didn't want to overdo it and make it weird. I just wanted you to know I care. And for the first time in a long while, I believed him. We went out to dinner that night. Nothing fancy, just a small Italian place downtown. And it felt easy. No tension, no trying too hard, just us. I think that's what I missed most last year, feeling like us again. A few days later, I found out that Ryan had actually set a reminder in his phone 6 months ago that said, "Don't forget her birthday." It made me laugh. Like the bar was so low it was underground. But still, he met it. Since then, he's been different. Not perfect. He still leaves laundry on the floor and sometimes forgets to take out the trash. But more intentional. He asks about my day, he listens without checking his phone, and when I mention plans, he actually remembers them. We've been doing couples therapy, too. That was his idea, which shocked me. Because he used to roll his eyes at talking about feelings. He told our therapist, Dr. Carter, that the birthday incident woke him up. He said, "I didn't realize how much she'd been shrinking herself to make room for me." Hearing him say that out loud broke something open in me. Our therapist asked him, "Why do you think you forgot?" And he said, "Because I assumed she'd always remind me, that she'd always pick up the slack." That was the most honest thing I'd ever heard him say. We've made a rule now, no more emotional guessing games. If something's important, say it. If something's forgotten, own it. No tests, no silent punishments, just honesty. It's not romantic in the movie sense. There's no dramatic reconciliation or flowers raining from the sky. But it's real. There's still a scar from that day he forgot. I won't lie, but now it's just that. A scar, not an open wound. And I think maybe that's what marriage actually is. Not two perfect people who never hurt each other, but two imperfect people who decide to keep showing up anyway. For my next birthday, I don't even care if it's a big thing. I just want him to remember. Not because I nagged, not because his phone reminded him, but because somewhere in his head, he thought, today matters to her, that's all I've ever wanted. It's been 4 years since that first forgotten birthday. The one that felt like the beginning of the end. And 3 years since the pancakes, the daisies, and the quiet promise that things would change. Looking back now, I almost can't believe how different life feels. Not perfect, but different in a way that feels grounded. Ryan and I still have our moments, but we've learned how to fight fair. That probably sounds small, but for us, it's huge. We kept going to therapy with Dr. Carter for about 1.5 years. It wasn't easy. There were sessions where we both walked out angry and quiet, not saying a word until we got to the car. But something about that process stripped us bare. No more pretending, no more passive-aggressive silences. I remember one session when Dr. Carter looked right at me and said, "You don't have to shrink just to keep peace." And she looked at him and said, "You don't get to coast and call it contentment." That line hit us both like a ton of bricks. We started communicating more intentionally after that. Every Sunday morning, before the chaos of the week started, we'd sit on the back porch with coffee and talk. Not about chores or bills, just us. Sometimes it was 10 minutes, sometimes an hour. We called it our check-in, and it became something we both quietly depended on. 2 years ago, I found out I was pregnant. I'll be honest, I was terrified. I kept thinking about how we used to communicate, or not communicate, and I worried about bringing a baby into that version of our lives. But when I told him, he got quiet for a long time, and then said, "I want to do this right with you, not just around you." And for the first time, I didn't doubt that he meant it. Pregnancy was rough. The morning sickness, the exhaustion, the weird cravings for pineapple and jalapenos. But Ryan showed up. He came to every appointment, held my hair back when I was sick, even started reading parenting books on his own. The guy who once forgot my birthday now knew more about swaddling techniques than I did. When our daughter Harper was born, something inside both of us shifted again. Watching him hold her for the first time, whispering, "Hey, Peanut, I'm your dad," made me cry in a way I didn't expect. All the anger, all the resentment, it didn't vanish, but it softened. Then came the small, real-life tests, sleepless nights, laundry piles that multiplied like rabbits. Moments where I felt like we were back to square one, snappy comments, old habits creeping in. But instead of letting those moments fester, we talked. Sometimes it took a day or two, but we didn't go silent anymore. Last year, when Harper turned 2, I planned a small backyard party. Balloons, cupcakes, close family and friends. I wasn't expecting anything grand. I just wanted a simple day for her. But halfway through the party, Ryan disappeared into the house. I thought maybe he was cleaning up or getting ice. A few minutes later, he came out holding a small cake with candles, and everyone started singing. To me, turns out, he'd checked the calendar and realized that Harper's birthday fell right next to mine, and he didn't want mine to get lost in the shuffle again. So he made sure there was a cake for me too. It sounds cheesy, but that moment felt like closure. Like he'd finally understood what that first forgotten birthday represented. It wasn't about gifts or attention. It was about feeling seen. This year, we took Harper to the beach for the first time, watching Ryan chase her through the sand, her curls bouncing, both of them laughing like kids. I felt this deep, peaceful kind of love. The kind that isn't fireworks anymore. It's a steady flame that doesn't go out. We've talked about maybe having another baby someday. And we've talked about what we both want our family to look like. Not perfect, but connected. Ryan even started writing things down in a little journal he keeps by his nightstand. He says it helps him remember, sometimes. I still think about that night in the car years ago, when I sat in silence after he forgot. I remember how small I felt, how invisible, but I also think about how far we've come since then. Not because one big gesture fixed it, but because we both chose to keep showing up, even when it was uncomfortable. If you had told me back then that we'd be here now, sharing a quiet, messy, real life with a toddler who refuses to nap, I don't think I would have believed you. But here we are. And when Ryan leans over every morning and says, "Good morning, birthday girl," even when it's not anywhere near my birthday, I can't help but laugh. It's become a running joke. His way of saying, "I didn't forget you, not anymore." And honestly, that's all I ever wanted. Stories number 9. Stop marrying into racist families just to complain about the racism. 29F. Have been dating my boyfriend, Daniel, 31M, for almost 3 years now. We met through mutual friends during a 4th of July barbecue in Denver, and for the most part, he's been everything I wanted in a partner. He's kind, patient, responsible, and he makes me laugh even when I'm angry at him. But recently something's been eating at me, and it's not even about him, it's about his family. Daniel comes from a small town in Kansas. His parents, Richard and Susan, are classic old-school Midwestern types. They're polite on the surface, church every Sunday, lawn mowed twice a week, all-American vibe. But once you scratch the surface, that polite exterior peels off pretty fast. I'm half black, half white. I grew up in a diverse area, surrounded by all kinds of people, so I never really dealt with racism in an overt, daily way until I met Daniel's family. They're not burning cross on the lawn kind of racist, but it's the insidious, we don't mean any harm kind of racism that creeps in through jokes and innocent comments. The first time I met them, Susan smiled wide and said, "Oh, you're even prettier than I expected. Daniel said you had curly hair." I was picturing something more wild. I didn't know how to respond, so I just said thanks and let it go. Later, when we were driving home, I told Daniel it made me uncomfortable. He sighed, apologized, and said, "Yeah, my mom's awkward around new people. She doesn't mean anything by it." That became the theme of every visit. His mom or dad would say something borderline racist. I'd point it out, and Daniel would brush it off with, "They don't mean it like that." A few months later, Susan asked me during dinner if I'd ever straightened out my hair for a job interview. I said no. She laughed and said, "You're lucky. I've heard some places are funny about that kind of thing." Daniel just kept eating. Then came Thanksgiving. The whole family gathered. Uncles, aunts, cousins, and it was chaos. His Uncle Bill asked me if I was mixed within 10 minutes of walking in the door. His cousin Hannah, who was probably 16, told me I talk really white in a tone that wasn't meant as a compliment. I held it together the whole night, smiled when I needed to, helped Susan in the kitchen, and tried not to let it ruin the holiday. But when Daniel and I got back to our hotel, I finally snapped. I told him I felt like I was constantly being poked at for being different, and that it wasn't fair that I had to just let it go. He got defensive. He said I was being too sensitive and that his family was just old-fashioned, I remember saying. "Daniel, they're not old-fashioned. They're racist." He looked genuinely hurt and said, "They're not bad people. They just grew up differently." That night was the first time I considered ending things. I loved Daniel, but I couldn't shake the feeling that he'd never truly understand how exhausting it was to be the only person in a room who looked like me and have to pretend it didn't matter. But then he did something that made me stay. A few weeks later, Susan made a Facebook post about how people need to stop blaming history for their problems. In response to some article about racial inequality, I ignored it. I didn't even follow her. But Daniel saw it, and for the first time, he didn't let it slide, he commented publicly, saying, "Mom, this is not okay, you're embarrassing yourself." She deleted the post an hour later. After that, he called me and said, "I'm sorry. You were right." He started setting boundaries. He told his parents that racist jokes or comments weren't welcome when I was around. Or ever, really. They didn't take it well. His dad accused him of being too sensitive, and his mom cried about how she didn't recognize her son anymore. For a while, things were tense. We didn't visit as often, and when we did, it was always a little awkward. But I noticed something shift in Daniel. He wasn't defensive anymore. He started talking about racism with his friends, asking questions about my experiences, and even reading books I mentioned. Still, I couldn't ignore the bigger picture. A few weeks ago, one of my friends from work, Jasmine, got married, her husband is white, and during the reception, someone made a comment about mixed marriages. Jasmine rolled her eyes and said, "Stop marrying into racist families just to complain about the racism." It was supposed to be a joke, but it hit me hard because she was right, and I was living that exact reality. I love Daniel. He's not like his family, but I keep wondering if I'm setting myself up for a lifetime of dealing with people like them. What happens if we get married and have kids? Do I want my children around people who'll make backhanded comments about their hair or skin tone? Do I want to keep walking into rooms where I'm the quiet minority everyone means well toward? I brought this up to Daniel recently. We were sitting on the porch, drinking coffee, and I said, "Do you ever think about how our kids would fit into your family?" He looked down for a long time before saying, "I think about it all the time, and it scares me too." He admitted that he's been struggling with guilt. Guilt for how long he ignored things. Guilt for how complicit he was. He said he's trying to change, but he knows his family might never fully accept me. And he hates that, so now we're at a crossroads. He's talking about moving farther away from his hometown, about creating distance, but I don't want him to resent me for pulling him away from his family. Even if he insists he doesn't mind, last night, he told me he plans to talk to them again. Not about one specific comment, but about the entire mindset. He said he's done being quiet about it, and I believe him, I really do. But I also can't help thinking about Jasmine's words. Stop marrying into racist families just to complain about the racism. I don't want to be the woman who spends her life fighting the same battle at every holiday dinner, biting my tongue while someone means well. I don't want my future kids to think that's normal. I'm not sure where this story ends yet. Maybe Daniel's family changes, maybe they don't. Maybe I marry him anyway because love wins, or maybe I walk away because peace matters more. But I know one thing for sure. Love shouldn't require you to shrink yourself to fit into someone else's world. And if that's the price, I'm not paying it. It's been almost 6 months since I wrote that post, and honestly, I didn't expect so many people to reach out. Reading everyone's comments was both comforting and hard. Comforting because so many people understood exactly what I was going through, and hard because it made me face how much I'd been minimizing things. After I posted, I sat with what I wrote for a few days before I said anything to Daniel. I wasn't trying to ambush him or turn our life into a social media debate, but I needed to clear my head. Once I felt ready, I asked him if we could talk, and we went for a long walk around the lake near our apartment. I told him that I was at my limit, not just with his parents, but with the cycle we'd fallen into. Every time his family crossed a line, I ended up being the one who felt like the problem for reacting. I said I loved him, but I couldn't keep doing that. Daniel listened quietly. For once, he didn't interrupt or defend anyone. When I finished, he said, "You're right. I've been lazy about this." He admitted that it was easier for him to keep the peace than to confront his parents, but that peace had always come at my expense. He asked if I'd be willing to go to therapy, not because he thought something was wrong with me, but because he wanted us to work through how we communicate when it comes to his family. I agreed. We started couples counseling in January. Our therapist, Dr. Walsh, didn't let him off the hook easily. She asked some tough questions about why Daniel felt responsible for protecting his parents' feelings more than mine. There were some tense sessions, but it helped. He began to realize that he had internalized a lot of keep-it-quiet habits from his upbringing. Meanwhile, things with his family got worse before they got better. In February, his dad called to invite us to a family reunion this summer. Daniel said we'd think about it, but when he hung up, he looked uneasy. I asked what was wrong, and he told me his dad had said, "Make sure your girlfriend brings some of that seasoning she likes. We don't usually do spicy food." I told him I wasn't going. Daniel didn't argue. He just sighed and said, "I get it." Later that week, Susan sent me a Facebook message. Not an apology, not even a friendly note, but a long paragraph about how the world has gotten too sensitive, and how she misses when people could just joke without worrying about being called racist. I didn't reply. Instead, I showed Daniel. He went quiet for a while, then picked up his phone and called her. I only heard his side of the conversation, but I knew it was serious because he rarely raised his voice. He told her he was done making excuses for their behavior, and that if she couldn't respect me, she wouldn't see him either. That was a huge turning point. For the next month, things were quiet. No calls, no texts. Daniel was clearly struggling. His mom used guilt like a weapon. She sent him a handwritten letter that started with, "I don't know what happened to the sweet boy I raised," and ended with, "We're praying for you to find your way back." He didn't respond. We spent that time focusing on us. We started talking about buying a house, taking weekend trips, building a life that wasn't centered around pleasing people who didn't like me to begin with. For the first time since we'd started dating, I felt like we were on the same team. Then, in April, out of nowhere, Susan called me directly. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. She started with small talk, asking about work, saying she'd been thinking about me, and I waited for the real reason behind the call. Sure enough, after a few minutes, she said, "I just wanted to clear the air. I think there's been a lot of misunderstanding between us." I told her I appreciated that she called, but I didn't think misunderstanding was the right word. I said, "Susan, the things that were said weren't misunderstandings. They were hurtful, I can forgive, but I can't pretend they didn't happen." She went quiet for a while and then said, "I guess I just didn't realize how much those things bothered you." That sentence, as frustrating as it was, felt like progress. For the first time, she didn't deny it. Daniel later told me that his dad had also started softening a little. Apparently, he'd made a comment to Daniel about how maybe they were too hard on you kids about appearances. Coming from Richard. That was huge. We haven't seen them since Christmas, but they've started calling more, and the tone has shifted. They don't joke about my hair. They don't make comments about sensitivity. And Susan actually asked for book recommendations from Daniel about race and relationships. He suggested White Fragility and Between the World and Me. I nearly choked when I heard that. I didn't think she'd even Google them, let alone read them. But the truth is, I don't need them to become perfect people. I just need them to treat me like a human being. The last big thing that happened was last month. Daniel and I went to his cousin Hannah's wedding. The same cousin who told me I talked white years ago. She came up to me during the reception and said, "I want to apologize. I didn't realize how messed up that comment was until recently." That moment hit me harder than I expected. Maybe people really can learn. Now I'm in this weird middle space. Daniel and I are stronger than we've ever been, but I'm still cautious. I'm not waiting for them to mess up again, but I'm not naive either. The advice I got from Reddit stuck with me. That it's not about fixing someone else's family. It's about choosing the life you want to live, and I've realized I want a life built on respect, not tolerance. So, no. I don't plan to marry into a racist family just to complain about it. I plan to make sure that if I do marry Daniel, it's because he and I are building something separate. Something better. And to his credit, he's shown me he wants that too. We still have a long way to go, but I'm no longer shrinking myself to fit. I'm standing tall, and Daniel's finally standing next to me, not behind me. It's been a little over a year since that last update, and I think this is probably the last time I'll ever write about this. So much has changed, and I finally feel like I can look back at everything with some peace instead of anger. After that post, life slowed down in the best way. Daniel and I moved into a small house about an hour outside Denver. It's not fancy, just a 2-bedroom place with a little backyard and creaky floors. But it feels like ours. No one else's energy in it, no one walking on eggshells, no uncomfortable dinner conversations, just us, the dog we adopted, a rescue named Benny, and quiet mornings with coffee and sunlight on the floor. We both agreed early on that we wouldn't make any big decisions until we felt truly stable. Marriage, kids, even engagement. All of it could wait until we weren't living under the shadow of family tension. So for the last year, we've been focusing on being better partners. Therapy helped a lot. It taught us how to communicate without falling into old habits. Him getting defensive, me shutting down, Dr. Walsh once told us. Love isn't proven through how much you tolerate. It's proven through what you protect. That line stuck with both of us, and to his credit, Daniel really did change. Not performatively, not to prove a point, just quietly and consistently. When someone at work made an offhanded racist comment, he didn't look to me for validation afterward. He shut it down in the moment. When his friends joked about wokeness, he said, "It's not being woke, it's being decent." Those might sound like small things, but they're the kind of moments that show who a person really is. As for his parents, that's been more complicated, but also surprisingly healing. Back in May, Daniel's mom called and asked if she could visit. I'll admit, I hesitated. The last time I saw her, things were still awkward, but Daniel told me he thought she was genuinely trying. So we agreed. She came for a weekend. When she walked through the door, I braced myself for something uncomfortable. But instead she hugged me, not a stiff, polite hug, a real one. She told me she'd been reading more, talking less, and trying to understand what it means to mean well versus do well. She even admitted she'd started going to a diversity discussion group at her church, something I would have bet money she'd never do. Over dinner, she didn't say a single tone-deaf thing. She asked about my job, my family, and actually listened. When she left, she hugged me again and said, "Thank you for being patient with me. I didn't deserve it, but I'm trying to earn it." That floored me, Daniel cried after she left. He said he never thought he'd see his mom change that much. His dad is still quieter about it all, but when we visited Kansas in July, he made a point of showing me the family photo wall. And there was a picture of me and Daniel front and center. That meant more than I expected. I won't romanticize it, though. The journey wasn't some magical redemption arc. It took distance, time, and a lot of uncomfortable conversations. There were moments where I doubted whether any of it was worth it, but looking back now, I think it was, not because I wanted to fix them. I've learned that's not my job. But because I wanted to see if people could actually learn when given the chance. Turns out, some can. Daniel and I did eventually get engaged this summer. It wasn't a huge surprise. We'd been talking about it for months. But he still managed to make it special. We were hiking in Estes Park when he stopped at a quiet overlook, pulled out a small ring, and said, "I want to build a family that never makes anyone feel like you did that first Thanksgiving." I said yes. When we called his parents to tell them, his mom cried again, and his dad said, "About time." They didn't make it weird or political or anything, just joy. We've decided that when we get married, it'll be small, just close friends, our parents, and maybe a few cousins who aren't stuck in the 1950s. Daniel's parents are invited, but not because we're pretending the past didn't happen. They're invited because they've shown they're willing to do the work, and if they hadn't, they wouldn't be. That's the biggest thing I've learned through all this. Forgiveness isn't pretending it never happened. It's acknowledging it did and deciding whether you want to rebuild from there. I chose to rebuild, carefully with boundaries. And I'm glad I did. To the people who told me to leave, I don't think you were wrong. There were times I should have walked away. But Daniel proved that growth can happen when someone truly wants to unlearn the things they were taught. Not everyone does, but he did. And as for me, I don't shrink anymore. I don't laugh off comments that hurt, and I don't stand in rooms that make me feel small. I learned that peace isn't found in pretending everything's fine. It's found in deciding who deserves your energy. So yeah, maybe I started this story as the woman marrying into a racist family just to complain about the racism. But that's not who I am anymore. I'm marrying a man who chose to break the cycle. Even when it meant losing comfort and tradition, we built something new. And for the first time in a long time, I'm not just surviving it. I'm proud of it. Stories number 10. My girlfriend wants to move in, but refuses to help with anything around the house, so I've been dating my girlfriend, Emily, for a little over 2 years now. We met through mutual friends at a barbecue, hit it off immediately, and things just felt easy between us. She's funny, charismatic, and honestly one of the most confident people I've ever met. When we first started dating, I thought that confidence was sexy. Over time, though, I realized it sometimes comes off as entitlement, especially when it comes to anything resembling responsibility. For context, I, 28M, bought my house about 3 years ago in a small suburb outside of Cincinnati. I worked hard for it, long hours at my IT job, saving every penny, skipping vacations for years. It's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath place, not huge, but perfect for me and my dog, Cooper. I've always been a clean freak. I don't mean military level, but I like things organized. Dishes done before bed, laundry folded, and floors vacuumed once a week. Emily, on the other hand, has a very different approach to living. When I first started staying at her apartment, I noticed it was always a mess. Clothes everywhere, dishes piled up, toothpaste crusted on the bathroom sink. I figured she was just busy. She worked long hours as a graphic designer, so I didn't judge too harshly. But as I got to know her more, I realized she just didn't care. Whenever I'd offer to help her clean, she'd say things like, "Why bother? It'll get messy again." She wasn't joking either. Her place looked like a tornado zone 90% of the time. I didn't nag about it. It wasn't my space. But it was something that made me nervous when she started talking about moving in. The idea came up earlier this year when her lease was ending. She mentioned how expensive rent had gotten, and how much sense it made for her to move into my place since we're basically living together anyway. At first, I was on board. I love her, and financially it did make sense. But then I thought about what living together would actually look like. I told her I'd love to talk about it, but we needed to have an honest conversation about expectations. Rent, bills, chores, responsibilities, all that. She rolled her eyes and said, "Oh, come on. It's not that deep. We're not roommates." That was my first red flag. Still, I laid it all out clearly. I told her I wasn't expecting her to pay half the mortgage since it's my house, but I wanted her to chip in on utilities, groceries, and help keep things clean. I even said I'd handle yard work, garbage, and house maintenance. All I asked was that she help with dishes, cooking, and keeping shared spaces tidy. Her response? "So basically you want a maid who pays you to live there." I was floored. I laughed nervously, thinking she was joking, but she wasn't. She genuinely thought that since it was my house, it was my responsibility. She said, "You bought it. You're the homeowner. You should take care of it. I don't clean up after someone else's property." That rubbed me the wrong way. I told her it wasn't about the property. It's about partnership. If we're living together, it's our space. We both use the kitchen, both use the bathroom, both eat off the same dishes, but she wasn't hearing it. She said she doesn't do chores and that housework is a waste of time. Now, I'm not some controlling boyfriend who expects a woman to clean everything. I literally do all my own chores and have since forever. But I don't want to live with someone who refuses to lift a finger. I told her flat out, "If you move in, you need to contribute. I'm not your dad. I'm your partner." That started a massive argument. She accused me of being sexist, saying I was trying to trap her into domestic work. I told her this wasn't about gender. If the roles were reversed, and I refused to clean, I'd expect her to be upset too. She didn't want to hear it. She said, "If I move in, it's because we're building a life together. You worrying about dishes and vacuuming is small-minded." She even suggested I hire a cleaner if it bothered me so much. After that fight, I told her maybe we weren't ready to live together. She got icy cold and barely spoke to me for days. When she finally did, she said, "If you really loved me, you'd want me there no matter what. You're letting chores come between us," I told her. "It's not about chores, it's about respect." Fast forward a month, and her lease ended. She stayed with her sister temporarily. Still insisting I'd come around, I didn't. Every time she brought it up, I repeated the same thing. I'm not comfortable living with someone who refuses to share basic responsibilities. Last week, she tried one last time. She came over with takeout, all smiles, acting like nothing had happened. Mid-dinner, she casually dropped, "So, when should I start moving stuff in?" I looked at her and said, "Emily, we already talked about this." She sighed dramatically, muttered something about how men are impossible, and stormed off. The next day, she texted me, "I can't believe you'd rather live alone forever than with someone who loves you." That message stuck with me. It made me question if maybe I am being too rigid. I mean, she's right. I do love her. But love doesn't mean letting someone disrespect your boundaries. For context, Emily has always had this carefree, almost stubborn approach to life. She's never been great with money. I've bailed her out of overdraft more than once, and she said before that she hates adulting. But I thought she'd grow out of that. Now I'm realizing she might not want to. Friends are split. My buddy Kyle says I dodged a bullet, that it's better to find out now than after she's moved in and turned my house upside down. My sister, though, said maybe I should compromise more and not treat love like a checklist. But where's the line between compromise and self-sabotage? I've always wanted a relationship built on teamwork. Not one person carrying all the weight. I don't expect perfection, just effort. And honestly, the more I think about it, the more I realize this isn't just about dishes or vacuuming. It's about how she views partnership. If she can't meet me halfway on something this small, what happens when bigger challenges come up? Like finances, parenting, or illness. That thought scares me, so now we're at this weird impasse. She's still at her sister's, and I'm at home with Cooper, cleaning my kitchen on a Sunday morning, wondering how something that started so simple turned into this massive incompatibility. I haven't ended things officially, but I think we both know where it's heading. Part of me feels guilty, like maybe I'm throwing away a relationship over something fixable, but another part of me knows, if someone refuses to grow or contribute, that's not love, that's dependence, and I can't build a future on that. It's been about 3 months since Emily stormed out after that takeout dinner, and honestly, life has been quieter, though not exactly easier. At first, I tried to reach out a couple of times, just simple messages like, "Hey, can we talk?" Or "I want to understand your perspective." Every time, she either ignored me or sent back something passive-aggressive like, "I don't need a lecture about my life." That was it. No conversation, no compromise, nothing. I realized pretty quickly that she wasn't interested in talking. She just wanted me to accept her terms. That realization hit hard for the first couple of weeks. I questioned myself constantly. Maybe I was being unreasonable? Maybe love really should mean tolerating someone's refusal to contribute to a shared life? I even talked to my friend Kyle about it. He looked at me like I was crazy and said, "Jess, she's trying to guilt-trip you into her way of living. That's not compromise, that's manipulation." He was right, of course. The more I thought about it, the more I realized I wasn't protecting my house or my chores. I was protecting myself. My mental space, my routines, my sense of stability, and Emily. She clearly wasn't willing to meet me even halfway. A few weeks after that, I decided to go full no contact. Deleted her number, blocked social media, and focused on my house, my dog, and my friends. It was tough. She would sometimes show up in my mind. A memory of her laughing in the kitchen, or her rolling her eyes at my obsession with folding laundry perfectly. But instead of feeling guilty, I started feeling relieved. Being alone gave me perspective. I started thinking about what I want in a partner. And it hit me. I want someone who sees shared responsibilities not as chores, but as care. Who understands that a home isn't just a space. It's a relationship in brick and wood. And Emily clearly doesn't see it that way. Around this time, I also realized that I'd been bending over backward for her in ways I didn't even notice. Covering bills she couldn't manage, cleaning her apartment when she was too busy or tired, letting her get away with tiny lies about her schedule or finances. It was subtle, but it added up. I had been compromising not for partnership, but for convenience. And that ends up costing more than any rent or utility bill. By the 2-month mark, Emily finally reached out. A single text that read, "I hope you're happy. I miss you." I didn't respond. Part of me wanted to explain myself, to defend the boundary I set. But another part of me knew that explaining wouldn't change her mind. She didn't want to meet me halfway. She wanted me to meet her entirely. Instead, I focused on rebuilding routines. I started cooking more, not because I had to, but because I enjoyed it. I organized my closet, set up a little reading nook in the living room, and even planted some flowers outside. My house became my sanctuary again, not a battleground for someone else's entitlement. I also started dating again, cautiously, nothing serious, just dinners and coffee with people who actually understood the concept of shared responsibility. It's refreshing. One woman I met, Claire, is a teacher, and she's equally obsessed with keeping her apartment tidy. Our first date involved swapping stories about cleaning hacks and favorite vacuum brands, and I felt this tiny spark of hope. That maybe I could find someone who matches my pace and values, not just my emotions. Of course, life isn't perfect. Occasionally, I'll think about Emily, how vibrant she was, how much fun we had, and a pang of nostalgia hits. But those pangs aren't regret, they're memory. I can enjoy what we had without pretending it could work long term. Kyle stopped by a few weeks ago and teased me about finally finding my cleaning soulmate. I laughed, but it felt good. For the first time in a long time, I'm not stressed about someone else moving in, not worried that my house will be trashed, not fearing confrontation over trivial things. I'm finally in control of my space, and it's liberating. I think the hardest part, honestly, has been accepting that Emily and I aren't compatible. It's not that she's a bad person. She's fun, confident, smart, but she's not the kind of partner I need for a shared life. That realization hurt more than the arguments or the storming out episodes. Because it means loving someone doesn't always mean being with them. Sometimes it means stepping back and letting them live their way while you live yours. So here I am, 3 months later, my house clean, Cooper happily sprawled on the couch, and me finally at peace. I've started thinking about long-term plans again. Maybe a new job, maybe a vacation alone to just reset. I feel like I'm learning to enjoy my own company in a way I never did before. And the best part? I'm confident now that when the right person does come along, someone who values partnership, respect, and shared responsibility, I'll know. I won't settle. I won't bend over backward just to keep love alive. I've learned the hard way that boundaries aren't just rules. They're survival. Emily is out of my house, out of my life, and out of my mind most days. And that's exactly how it should be. It's been about 9 months since Emily finally stopped trying to move in. And honestly, I feel like a completely different person. Not in a dramatic, I reinvented my life overnight way, but in the subtle, steady way where little things finally start to feel right. After the dust settled, I focused on myself and my home. I've become even more meticulous about my routines. Cooking, cleaning, organizing. But this time it's not about control. It's about peace. I can walk into my living room and see exactly how I want it, without worrying that someone else's mess is going to disrupt it. Cooper loves it too. He's got his space, I've got mine, and nobody is stomping over either of us. A few months after Emily faded out of my life, I started seeing someone new. Claire, the teacher I met shortly after the breakup drama. She's incredible, responsible, funny, genuinely thoughtful, and she actually likes folding laundry, or at least doesn't complain about it. From day one, she respected my routines, my house rules, and even my obsession with a clean kitchen. And the crazy part? I didn't have to argue, negotiate, or explain myself. She just fit. Claire and I have built a relationship that feels effortless, not because it's perfect, but because we both value partnership. We share chores, bills, responsibilities. We laugh while we clean, we cook together, and sometimes we argue about trivial things. But it's never about disrespect or unwillingness to contribute. It's just life. I ran into Emily once about 6 months after she finally moved out. It was at a mutual friend's birthday party. She looked the same, confident, stylish, loud, and I felt a twinge of old nostalgia. She saw me, smiled awkwardly, and waved. That was it. No confrontation, no attempts to guilt me. Nothing. I realized in that moment how far I'd come. I didn't feel anger, sadness, or regret. I just felt peace. Living alone for those months before Claire came into the picture taught me a lot. I learned that boundaries are essential, and standing by them doesn't make you unreasonable. It makes you sane. I also realized that love is not just about emotion. It's about shared values, respect, and effort. Emily and I loved parts of each other, but we weren't compatible when it came to building a life together. And that's okay. Since then, my life has stabilized in ways I didn't think possible back when I was constantly negotiating with Emily over something as simple as dishwashing. I finally feel like I'm living in a space that reflects me, with a partner who reflects the kind of relationship I want, mutual, supportive, and healthy. Looking back, I don't resent Emily, and I don't regret setting my boundaries. I understand now that letting her go wasn't a loss. It was a gift to myself. I've grown stronger, more self-aware, and more confident in what I want from life and love. Sometimes I think about how things could have been different if she'd been willing to compromise. But mostly, I'm grateful that I didn't settle. I didn't compromise my standards or my peace. And in the end, that's taught me more about love than any argument or heartbreak ever could. Life isn't perfect, and I know challenges will come. But I'm confident now that I can handle them, with someone who wants to meet me halfway, and with myself firmly in control of my home, my boundaries, and my happiness. For anyone out there struggling with a partner who refuses to share responsibilities, I can say this with certainty. Standing your ground doesn't make you unreasonable. It makes you capable of building a life worth living. And as for Emily, I wish her well. I hope she finds what she's looking for. I found mine, stories number 11. My sister lost her mind when I told her I can't be her built-in babysitter anymore. I, 27F, have always been the responsible one in my family. My sister, Emily, 32F, had her first baby at 24 and 2 more after that. She and her husband, Brad, 35M, are fine parents, I guess. But they depend heavily on everyone else to make their lives function. Especially me. It started small. The occasional weekend here or there when she needed a break. I love my nieces and nephew, Maddie, 8, Liam, 6, and Olivia, 3. So of course I said yes. I'd take them to the park, cook them dinner, do bath time. It wasn't a big deal at first. But over time, "Can you help me out this weekend?" turned into a regular expectation. Somewhere along the way, it stopped feeling like a favor and started feeling like a job I didn't sign up for. Every Friday afternoon, without fail, Emily would text me something like, "Hey, can you come by tomorrow around 10? Brad and I need to run errands." I'd show up, stay all day, maybe even overnight if they decided to make a weekend of it. I'd be exhausted by Sunday night. Laundry unfolded, groceries unbought, my own weekend totally gone, and they never paid me, not even for food or gas. I didn't mind at first because I thought I was helping family, but then I realized Emily wasn't asking other people, just me. Our brother Mark, 29 Nem, lives nearby and doesn't get roped into this. When I brought that up once, she said, "He's a guy. You know how men are with kids?" That pissed me off more than I expected. Like my time and energy mattered less because I'm a woman, because I don't have kids of my own yet. So apparently I'm available. The breaking point came last month. I had planned a weekend trip with my boyfriend Aaron, 30 mum. We'd booked a cabin by the lake for our anniversary. 2 days of quiet and no responsibilities. I was so excited I could barely focus at work that week. Then Thursday evening, Emily called. "Hey, I just found out Brad's company is hosting this golf retreat thing," she said. "Can you watch the kids this weekend? You're free, right?" I told her I already had plans, and she got quiet. Then she said, "You're really going to cancel on your nieces and nephew for some random trip?" I said, "No, I'm not canceling on them. I'm just not canceling my life for you." She huffed and said, "Wow, selfish much?" That was the last straw, I told her. "Emily, I love your kids, but I'm done babysitting every weekend. You and Brad need to figure something else out. I'm not your backup parent." There was a long silence. Then she said, "Fine, don't bother coming around then." And she hung up. I thought she'd cool off after a few days. But it's been over a month now. My mom, Karen, 58F, called me last week and said, "You know how Emily is. She's stressed. Just apologize and move on." I said, "Apologize for what? Having boundaries?" Mom sighed and said, "Family helps family. That's what we do," I told her. Family doesn't mean being taken advantage of. Since then, I've heard from Mark that Emily's been talking crap about me at family gatherings, saying I abandoned her and that I chose a man over family. Brad apparently called me a flake to one of our cousins. It's frustrating because none of them know the full story. They just think I stopped helping one day out of nowhere. Meanwhile, Aaron's been supportive, he told me. "You've been giving them your weekends for years. It's okay to reclaim your time." And he's right. I hadn't realized how burned out I was until I got my weekends back. Last Sunday, Aaron and I went hiking and had brunch. We came home, watched movies, and I realized I hadn't had a weekend that relaxing in years. I actually felt human again. Still, part of me feels guilty. I grew up being the fixer when my parents fought. I was the one who calmed things down. When Emily dropped out of college, I helped her move. When she had Maddie, I was there at 2 a.m. driving her to the hospital because Brad couldn't find his wallet. So saying no feels like betraying the role I've always had. But I can't keep sacrificing my peace to make everyone else comfortable. Yesterday, Emily texted me for the first time since our argument. It said, "Kids miss you. Maddie asked why you don't love them anymore." That broke me, because I do love them. But I also know that's manipulative. Emily's trying to guilt me through her kids, and that's not fair. I didn't respond right away. Later that night, she sent another message. "I can't find anyone to watch them next Saturday. Can you please just this once?" And I stared at it for a long time. Old me would have said yes immediately. Guilt, obligation, love. But then I thought about all the weekends I lost, all the resentment I swallowed. I thought about how she never once offered to return the favor. So I wrote back, "Sorry, I can't. I hope you find someone." She left me on read. Aaron told me he's proud of me. I don't know if proud is the right word. I just feel a weird mix of sadness and relief, like I finally set down something heavy I'd been carrying too long. I still want a relationship with my nieces and nephew. They're amazing kids, kind, funny, full of personality, but I can't keep enabling Emily's entitlement just to stay close to them. If she can't separate her kids from her ego, that's on her. I'm hoping she'll eventually calm down. Maybe one day she'll actually understand where I'm coming from. That saying no doesn't mean I stopped caring. It means I started caring about myself too. And honestly, that's something I should have learned a long time ago. 2 months passed before I heard from Emily again. Not directly, of course. She's still too proud for that. But through my mom, my brother, and the endless cycle of family gossip that never dies in our household. Apparently, after I stopped babysitting, things started to unravel for her a bit. She'd been depending on me way more than I realized. She tried to find new babysitters, but either they were too expensive, canceled last minute, or didn't understand her kids. Brad started getting irritated because he couldn't keep skipping out on his weekend hobbies to help her. And she started blowing up on him, which, naturally, became everyone else's problem, too. The first I really saw Emily again was at my mom's birthday dinner. I wasn't even sure she'd show up, but she did, fashionably late, kids in tow, looking tired and wired all at once. When she saw me, she gave this stiff smile and said, "Hey," I said, "Hey," back. It was weirdly formal for two sisters who used to tell each other everything. For a while, we just orbited each other, polite and distant. I helped Mom set out food while Emily chased after Olivia, who was running around with a frosting-covered cupcake. The tension was thick, but no one said anything. My mom, of course, couldn't help herself and muttered under her breath, "Can't my girls just get along for one night?" We were halfway through dinner when the inevitable happened. Emily said, "So, I heard you and Aaron went upstate again last weekend." I nodded. "Yeah, it was really nice. We did some hiking." She gave this tight little smile. "Must be nice having that kind of free time." I froze mid-bite. I could feel my mom's eyes darting between us, silently pleading for me to just let it go. But something inside me snapped. "Emily," I said calmly, "I'm not going to feel bad for having boundaries. I told you I can't be your regular babysitter anymore. That doesn't mean I stopped caring." Her face hardened. "You could have just said yes once in a while. I'm drowning, and you act like spending time with your nieces and nephew is such a burden." I put my fork down. "It's not them. It's the fact that you expect me to do it every weekend without asking if I even have time. You didn't need help. You needed someone to take responsibility for you." Brad tried to jump in, but my mom shot him a look that could kill. The whole table went quiet, except for Olivia humming to herself. Emily crossed her arms. "You think you're better than me now? Because you don't have kids? Because you get to go on vacations and have a life?" That stung. "No," I said quietly. "I just want to have my own life." "That's all I ever wanted." She rolled her eyes, muttered something under her breath about selfish people, and left early with the kids. Mom looked heartbroken, but I didn't chase her. After dinner, Mom sighed and said, "You two are so much alike it's ridiculous." Both stubborn as mules, she wasn't wrong. The next week, Emily blocked me on Facebook. Petty, but not unexpected. The thing is, it didn't hurt as much as I thought it would. I'd spent so much of my adult life trying to fix things for her, cover for her, babysit for her, smooth over her messes, that the silence almost felt peaceful. Still, I missed the kids. I missed Maddie's wild stories, Liam's weird obsession with dinosaurs, Olivia's little giggle. They didn't do anything wrong. I wanted to see them without walking into the emotional minefield that is my sister. So one day, I reached out to Brad directly. I wasn't sure if that was crossing a line, but I just texted him, "Hey, I know things are tense with Emily, but I'd love to see the kids sometime. Maybe grab ice cream or go to the park." He replied almost instantly, "Yeah, that'd be fine. Emily's out with friends on Saturday. I can drop them off if you want." It was like a little breath of normalcy. When I saw the kids that weekend, Maddie ran straight into my arms, yelling, "Auntie Lexi?" That's me, Alexis, by the way. Liam showed me the new Pokemon cards he'd gotten, and Olivia immediately tried to feed me goldfish crackers like I hadn't eaten in a week. We went to the park, got ice cream, laughed until our stomachs hurt, and for the first time in months, I didn't feel like I was walking on eggshells. But of course, peace never lasts long in my family. The next day, Emily called me. I almost didn't pick up, but curiosity won. "Did you go behind my back?" she demanded the second I said hello. "What?" "I found out you saw the kids yesterday," Brad told me after the fact. "You knew I didn't want you around them until we talked." I rubbed my forehead. "Emily, you never said that. You just stopped talking to me. You could have asked." "I did ask. Brad said it was fine." "Oh, of course he did," she snapped. "He'll agree to anything if it keeps the peace." "You had no right." I tried to stay calm. "They're my family, too. I wasn't trying to go behind your back, Em. I just miss them." She was quiet for a second, and when she spoke again, her voice cracked a little. "You think it's easy for me? You think I like being the bad guy?" I hesitated. "Then stop making me your enemy." The call ended on an awkward, Unfinished note. She didn't apologize, and neither did I. But 2 days later, she sent me a photo of the kids making Halloween costumes with the caption, "Liam's being a T-Rex again, LOL." It was small, but it felt like a start. Now, weeks later, things are still weird, but better. Emily doesn't ask me to babysit anymore. Once in a while, I'll offer if I want to, not because I feel obligated. She's even found a local college student to help with childcare, which apparently has been life-changing. We're not back to normal yet, but maybe that's okay. Maybe normal wasn't healthy in the first place. Last weekend, we all had brunch as a family. No fighting, no guilt trips. Emily looked tired but genuinely happy. She even laughed when I made a joke about Brad's dad's sneakers. For the first time in years, I think we're learning how to be sisters again. Not codependent, not resentful, just two people trying to love each other without losing themselves. And honestly, that's more than I ever thought we'd get back. It's been almost a year since I first told Emily I couldn't babysit every weekend, and it's wild to think about how much has changed since then. Not just between us, but in me back then. Saying no to my sister felt like setting a grenade in the middle of our family. I was terrified of what would happen if I stopped being the dependable one. The good sister, the helpful daughter, the one who never said no. Now I look back and realize that was exactly what needed to happen for things to start healing. Even if it was messy. Over the past year, Emily and I slowly rebuilt something. Not the old version of our relationship, where she leaned on me for everything and I quietly resented her, but something new. Less codependent, more honest. It started around the holidays. Mom invited everyone for Thanksgiving, and honestly, I almost didn't go. I wasn't sure if Emily and Brad would even talk to me. But Aaron convinced me. "You can't avoid your family forever," he said. "Go for you, not them." When we got there, Emily was in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, hair a mess, yelling at the kids to stop fighting over the mashed potatoes. She looked up and froze when she saw me. I smiled awkwardly. "Hey," she stared for a second, then said, "You brought pie, right?" I laughed because of course I did. Dinner that night was good. A little awkward, but good. The kids told me about school. Olivia showed me her finger painting, and even Brad made an effort to be civil. But the moment that stuck with me came after dessert. When Emily and I were in the kitchen alone, washing dishes, she didn't look at me when she said, "I didn't realize how much I relied on you until you stopped showing up." I stayed quiet, waiting. She sighed. "It wasn't fair. I treated you like a safety net. I just assumed you'd always be there." "That's what sisters do," I said softly. "Yeah, but not like that," she replied. "You weren't my sister. You were my second parent." That was the closest thing to an apology I'd ever gotten from her. But it was enough. Over the next few months, things really started shifting. Emily started therapy. She said it was mostly to manage stress and figure herself out. But I could tell it was more than that. She started setting boundaries with Brad, too, making him take a more active role with the kids, finding balance again. She even told me she'd applied for a part-time job at a local library because she needed something that wasn't just mom mode 24/7. When she got it, I was probably more excited than she was. Meanwhile, I've been doing my own growing. Aaron and I moved in together last spring, for the first time in my adult life. I feel like my time belongs to me. We've built this quiet, peaceful rhythm. Cooking dinner, planning weekend trips, saying no when we need to. It's boring in the best possible way. About 2 months ago, Emily called me out of the blue. "Hey," she said, "can I ask you something weird?" "Sure," she hesitated. "Would you maybe want to come over and babysit next weekend?" I must have gone silent for too long because she rushed to say, "Not because I expect you to. Just because the kids keep asking about you. And Brad and I have a date night." "Totally fine if you can't." I laughed so hard I almost dropped my phone. "You know what? Yeah, I'd love to, and it was actually fun." When I showed up, Maddie had drawn me a picture of us holding hands with hearts all around it. Liam gave me a plastic dinosaur for protection, and Olivia insisted on doing my hair with about 47 mismatched clips. Emily and Brad left, and I spent the evening making popcorn and watching movies with the kids. No resentment, no tension, just love. When Emily came home, she hugged me. Not one of those polite family hugs, but a real one. "Thanks," she said quietly. "Not just for tonight, for everything." That one hit me, because for the first time, I didn't feel like her babysitter. I felt like her sister again. Now, we actually talk, not just about her kids or family drama, but about life. She'll text me memes at random or ask how Aaron's doing. Sometimes she even calls just to vent about work. The kids video call me all the time to show me their latest art projects or tell me about school. And Mom? Well, she still plays referee sometimes. But I think she's relieved we worked it out. Last week she told me, "You two finally learned how to love each other like equals." She's right. Here's the thing I've learned through all of this. Saying no doesn't break relationships. It clarifies them. The people who really love you might get mad, might pull away, might throw guilt around, but the ones who care enough will come back and meet you halfway. I spent years thinking love meant saying yes, being available, keeping the peace. But sometimes, love looks like standing your ground. Sometimes it's choosing peace for yourself, not just for everyone else. The other night, Aaron and I were sitting on the porch, watching the sunset, and I told him, "It's weird. I think I finally feel like an adult." He laughed. "Took you long enough. Maybe it did. But I think that's okay. I'm learning that growing up isn't about cutting people off. It's about learning how to keep them in your life without losing yourself in the process. And if that means fewer weekends of babysitting and a few awkward family dinners along the way, I'll take it. Because now, when Emily texts me, it's not a demand, it's an invitation. And I finally know the difference." Stories number 12. My stepdaughter's birthday turned into a complete disaster. After my husband's ex showed up when I married Daniel, I knew his daughter would always come first. And I was fine with that. I actually liked that about him. It showed he was responsible, steady, and not one of those divorced dads who treated parenting like a weekend hobby. His daughter Ava was 6 when I met her. Sweet kid, shy, but curious. She'd hide behind Daniel's leg the first few times we met, and peek up at me like she was trying to decide whether I was safe. Over time, she warmed up. By the time we got married, she was 8 and calling me Maddie. I never tried to replace her mom, Lauren. I knew my lane, but I tried to be a steady adult in her life. I made sure our home felt like her home too. We decorated her room together, had Friday movie nights, baked cookies on holidays, all the usual stepmom bonding stuff. The problem was, Lauren didn't like me. It wasn't a mild, civil dislike either. It was the kind where you could practically feel the temperature drop when she walked into the same room. She'd make these passive-aggressive comments whenever we had to see her during pickups or school events. Stuff like, "Oh, I see you're letting her eat sugar again," or "Interesting outfit, Madison." I wouldn't have thought Daniel's taste leaned that way. Daniel would usually roll his eyes and brush it off, but I could tell it bothered him. They had split up years before we met, but there was still this unspoken tension. Like Lauren wanted to remind everyone that she had been there first. I tried to take the high road. I stayed polite, smiled when I didn't want to, and kept my distance. But it got harder when Lauren started doing weird boundary-pushing things. She'd call Daniel late at night about co-parenting concerns, but the conversations would drift into their old marriage. She'd bring up memories that had nothing to do with Ava. Once, she sent Daniel a long text saying she missed how they used to communicate, and that she felt lost since the divorce. Daniel showed me the message right away, which I appreciated. He told me he'd made it clear that their relationship was strictly about Ava. I believed him, but I still felt uneasy. So fast forward to a few months ago. Ava's 10th birthday. We planned a backyard party at our house with a bounce house, games, and a big cake shaped like a unicorn. Ava was so excited she could barely sleep the night before. Daniel and I had spent weeks planning everything. Lauren was supposed to throw her own little celebration the next day at her place, so this one was ours. We sent out invites to Ava's school friends, neighbors, and Daniel's parents. Everything was going great. The kids were laughing, the adults were chatting, and Ava was running around with frosting on her face. I was actually having fun until I turned around and saw her. Lauren, standing in my backyard like she owned the place. She was holding a gift bag and wearing this smug little smile, like she knew exactly what she was doing. I pulled Daniel aside immediately. "Why is she here?" He looked just as shocked. "I have no idea. I didn't invite her." Lauren came over before he could say anything else. "Relax," she said with this syrupy fake smile. "I just wanted to drop off Ava's present. I wasn't going to stay long." Except she did stay. She stayed for almost 2 hours. She made herself a drink, chatted up Daniel's mom, and even took selfies with Ava in front of the cake, which she later posted on Facebook with a caption that said, "Family time for my baby's 10th birthday. I felt invisible in my own house. Every time I tried to take control back, to help serve cake or organize games, she'd swoop in and act like it was her party, At one point she even said, "I remember when Daniel and I threw Ava's 3rd birthday party here. Oh wait, you weren't around yet, right?" That one stung. Daniel finally told her she needed to leave, but she acted offended and said, "I'm just here for my daughter. Don't make this about you," and that's when I lost it. I told Daniel I couldn't do this anymore. Went inside, grabbed my purse, and left. I didn't make a scene. I didn't yell. I just quietly got in my car and drove to my sister's place across town. About 20 minutes later, Daniel called, asking me to come back. He said Ava was upset that I'd left and didn't understand what was happening. I told him I'd talk to her later, but I wasn't going to share space with someone who couldn't respect boundaries. He said he got it, but I could tell he was frustrated too. Torn between wanting to protect me and not wanting to upset Lauren or Ava. The next day, Lauren apparently told Ava that I stormed off because I don't like her mommy. Ava was confused and hurt, and it took days to untangle that. I sat her down and explained that adults sometimes need space when things get uncomfortable, but that I loved her and always would. She seemed to understand, but I could see the disappointment in her eyes. Since then, things have been tense. Daniel and I have had several long talks about boundaries and what co-parenting should really look like. I told him that I will not be in another situation where his ex shows up uninvited and takes over. He agreed and promised to enforce stricter boundaries. Lauren, of course, thinks I overreacted. She sent Daniel a text saying I was immature for leaving a child's party over petty jealousy. It wasn't jealousy. It was exhaustion. I have tried for years to coexist peacefully, but she keeps crossing the line. I love Ava. I've been there for her in ways that go beyond being a stepmom. I've stayed up helping her with homework, held her hand through nightmares, and celebrated her wins like they were my own. But I can't keep playing nice when her mother keeps undermining me in my own home. Daniel says he understands now, and he swears this won't happen again. We're even considering doing future birthdays at neutral venues, like a park or kids' play center, where there's no home turf for anyone to take over. Still, I can't shake how humiliated I felt that day. Watching Lauren parade around, pretending like she was still the main woman in Daniel's life, in our backyard, while everyone else awkwardly smiled through it. I keep wondering if I should have stayed for Ava's sake, just to avoid the fallout. But another part of me feels like I needed to draw that line once and for all, because if I didn't, she never would have stopped. It's been about 3 months since that birthday incident, and things have finally started to stabilize. Though it's been a bumpy road. Right after the party, Daniel and I sat down and had a long, serious conversation about boundaries. He admitted that he had been trying to keep the peace for years, letting Lauren overstep because he didn't want to deal with her anger or guilt trips. I told him that while I understood that impulse, it couldn't happen anymore. If Lauren kept showing up uninvited or trying to take over family events, I wouldn't be there to witness it. Daniel actually agreed. He started setting firmer boundaries, which was new for him. He told Lauren in no uncertain terms that future parties, holidays, and events were either coordinated ahead of time or she wasn't welcome. He even sent her a message outlining what was appropriate, dropping off Ava's gift, maybe a quick hello, but no lingering, no taking over, no selfies for social media. That part was huge for me. Ava has been adjusting too. At first, she was upset that I left during her party, but I made sure to explain it in a way she could understand. I told her that sometimes adults need to take care of themselves so they can be better for the people they love. I reminded her over and over that I loved her and that leaving didn't mean I didn't want to celebrate her. It took a few weeks, but she seems to have internalized that now. She's even joking about future parties. "Mommy, no exes allowed this time," which made me laugh. Daniel and I also talked a lot about how to handle Lauren in the future. We agreed that we would maintain polite, limited communication, but that he would take the lead in enforcing rules. If Lauren tries to overstep again, Daniel will step in immediately, and I will remove myself from the situation if necessary. That has already helped me feel less anxious. We even tested this system with a small 4th of July get-together at a local park. Lauren was invited because Daniel said it was fair for Ava to see both her parents, but she knew in advance that she had limited time and a clearly defined role. She stuck to the plan. I was able to relax and enjoy the day with Ava without worrying about anyone undermining me. It was the first time in years I felt like we had some control over the situation. That said, there have been challenges. Lauren still sends passive-aggressive texts, mostly trying to guilt Daniel into letting her do things her way. I try not to respond. Daniel forwards me anything relevant and handles it directly. We've both learned that the only way to survive this is teamwork and consistent boundaries. Emotionally, I'm in a better place. I no longer feel like I'm constantly fighting to prove my place in the family. I'm present, I'm involved, and I'm respected, at least for the most part. And Ava seems happier too, now that she sees that Daniel and I are a united front, and that while we love both of her parents, she doesn't have to witness unnecessary conflict. It's not perfect. I still have moments of anger or frustration when I think about how disrespectful Lauren has been, but I've realized that I can't control her behavior, only my own reaction, and focusing on building a safe, loving environment for Ava and myself has made all the difference. Moving forward, Daniel and I are planning to make birthday parties and major holidays more neutral, like renting small venues or hosting them at local parks. That way, there's less risk of territorial behavior or overstepping. We're also documenting agreements with Lauren now, so there's no ambiguity. All in all, I feel like we've learned how to navigate a tricky family dynamic without sacrificing our own sanity or Ava's sense of security. It's been stressful, but I can finally say I feel like I have some peace of mind again. It's been almost a year since Ava's birthday party meltdown, and I think it's safe to say we've finally found a balance that works. Though it took a lot of trial and error, patience, and honest conversations between Daniel and me. The first thing we did after the initial fallout was set clear, non-negotiable boundaries with Lauren. Daniel made it explicit: no uninvited appearances, no prolonged visits during our events, and no attempts to control or overshadow activities involving Ava. He emphasized that any communication about Ava needed to stay focused on co-parenting logistics, pickup times, school events, doctor appointments, and nothing else. He told her that if she couldn't respect these boundaries, she simply wouldn't be included. He didn't threaten, he just stated it clearly. And for the first time, she seemed to understand. Or at least she didn't protest further. From my side, I worked on separating my emotional response from Lauren's antics. Instead of stewing over every comment or every Facebook post, I focused on Ava and Daniel. I reminded myself that Lauren's behavior reflected her own unresolved issues, not my worth as a stepmom. It wasn't easy, especially at first. There were nights I cried in the car after a stressful call from Lauren, but over time I stopped letting it consume me. I realized that protecting my own mental health was essential for Ava's well-being too. We tested our new system during Ava's next birthday. This time, we rented a local indoor play center. No one could show up uninvited, and everyone had defined roles. Lauren was invited, but understood she could only drop off her gift and spend a short amount of time with Ava. She didn't linger, didn't try to take over, and most importantly, she didn't undermine me in front of the kids for the first time. I could fully enjoy the celebration without feeling invisible or sidelined. Ava had an amazing time, and I was genuinely happy for her. In the months that followed, Lauren's presence has become predictable and controlled. She shows up only when she's invited and sticks to the plan. Daniel and I have kept our communication lines open and transparent, forwarding texts and updates to each other so there's no room for manipulation. It's still not perfect. Lauren still sends occasional passive-aggressive messages, but Daniel handles them calmly, without involving me unnecessarily. Ava has responded well to this new structure. She sees Daniel and me as a united front, and she knows her feelings are prioritized without needing to mediate conflicts between us and her mom. It's helped her feel safer and more secure, which has been my ultimate goal all along. She even jokes about the no uninvited moms allowed rule now, which makes me laugh. She knows she's safe, and that's what matters most. Personally, I've grown through all of this. I've learned to assert myself without feeling guilty, to protect my family without overreacting, and to pick my battles wisely. I've realized that stepping away from drama isn't abandoning anyone. It's preserving the peace and creating a healthy environment. Daniel has also grown. He's learned that co-parenting doesn't mean letting the other parent dominate or manipulate, and that boundaries are essential for everyone involved. Looking back, I understand why the situation was so hard. Blending families is complicated, and ex-spouses can make it exponentially more difficult. But I also see how far we've come. We've turned a potentially toxic dynamic into something manageable, built around respect, clear rules, and genuine care for Ava. I don't anticipate Lauren ever becoming my best friend. And that's okay, she doesn't need to be. What matters is that she respects the boundaries we've set. And so far she has, begrudgingly perhaps, but consistently. Daniel and I are finally in a place where we can enjoy family time without anxiety, without walking on eggshells, and without wondering if someone will show up uninvited and ruin the day. We even hosted a small Halloween party with friends and family, and everything went off without a hitch. No unexpected appearances, no drama, just fun, laughter, and happy kids. In the end, I've realized that being a step-parent isn't about replacing anyone or competing with an ex. It's about creating stability, love, and safety for the child, and in that, I feel proud of the role I've carved out for myself. I've also learned that sometimes, walking away, even for a few minutes during a stressful event, isn't weakness. It's a signal, a boundary, a statement, and a form of self-respect. I left that birthday party, and while it hurt Ava initially, it was the catalyst for the healthier, more structured co-parenting system we have now. Life isn't perfect. It probably never will be when ex-spouses are involved, but it's calm, predictable, and safe. And that's more than I could have hoped for a year ago.